used.
Thank you, Mayor. For tonight's work session, we scheduled 2 items. First is a discussion of a proposed business incentive policy. The second item is discussion of the town's purchasing policy. The first item is the business retention program discussion. So,
Yeah, just real quickly, both of these items seem to be very important, that we could spend a whole work session on both of them. I'm wondering if it would be better if we chose one of them to have a discussion about tonight instead. And I would suggest the purchasing policy discussion, but that's just my thought right now. But I think we could spend, 2 work sessions on both these items.
however the board wants to proceed.
Makes no difference to me. We can just start.
How far we go.
Exactly.
So would you prefer to start with the purchasing policy first?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's fine.
And the only reason I was going to hope for the other way around is because not all elements of that, including the green part, were actually reviewed by the RCAP. So, at least not in that format.
I'm sorry, yeah?
Not in that format, anyway. The green part of the purchasing was not reviewed in that format by the RCAP.
Back in
What we-
2008, when it was adopted?
No, recently. We actually proposed some alternative language for green procurement, and it doesn't seem to have made it in there.
Well, so that policy was...
In the purchasing
Right.
document that had a green...
It was adopted in 2008, and I don't believe the town's made any changes since 2008, so...
Yeah, one of the other reasons, I'm sorry, Matt, not do the incentive package tonight is that it's some good ideas, but there's really nothing there that we could really discuss other than maybe we consider a couple of these items here as opposed to a whole policy.
Well, so the thought behind that was to get some direction from the board and then draft a policy that would be adopted by the board.
Yeah.
And we'd have discussion, but
I equally was troubled by the heft of both of these, and can we at least agree to split the time or to devote 15 minutes to the economic incentive plan and then shift so that we control
and I can,
the discussion?
if the board
Not
would
the
choose,
discussion,
I
the
can
time.
schedule one of these for another?
My concern is that it goes farther out, and when is this discussion going to take place? So if we can start with one, I mean, I feel like we're debating this, but we've lost 8 minutes. So we'll just get started with one
No,
Mm-hmm.
thing, and if
we've
we get
lost
through it,
3 minutes.
oh, it's 6:08.
Yep, that's
Well, we
fine.
started at 5.
That's fine, and maybe we can finish the conversation at next week's retreat, where I'd like to spend, considerable more time on economic development and possibly this incentive package.
Well, why don't we have it, let's just go in the order of what it is right here and see what we can get to, and then see if we need to flesh out more details. Does that sound fair?
And I think the retreat is a great idea, Chris. We definitely need to have more of a discussion.
Okay. So just quickly then, in the budget for 2012 was $75,000 for some sort of a business retention incentive program for existing businesses was the focus here. Our staff looked at a number of other municipalities and the different items that they include as part of their programs. You can see there the list: energy efficiency rebates, capital grants, deferral of operating expenses. We just provide that list to you so you had an idea of what other program items are offered in other cities. And we can go discuss those further if you'd like.
What does Louisville specifically do? It's some sort of business beautification program, correct, for facades and such? Is that where you got that
Paul?
bullet point?
Paul Nellis, town staff. Trustee Williams, I, with the assistance of other town staff, as well as the executive director of the chamber, reviewed a number of other municipalities' policies. If you had a question about Louisville in particular, theirs actually is not focused, at least for the information they provide on the website, their program is not focused on beautification programs. That predominantly came from the City of Thornton and City of Wheatridge. Louisville's policy, at least advocated on their website, is for new businesses or substantial expansion of existing businesses. And you see those periodically in the paper. They're typically sales or use tax rebates, business incentive rebates, business permit rebates, construction use tax rebates, but they're typically for a expansion of an existing business or bringing in a new business. As it relates to supporting their existing business is somewhat limited, not to be confused with their dedicated sales tax that they have for preservation of some of their historic entities. That's a totally different animal.
Okay.
But again, theirs is more traditional as it relates to new business attraction and expansion of existing businesses, our research has shown.
One question, I think it's one question, but what's going through my mind in looking at this, and I don't think anybody really can answer it tonight, but it's something that may involve further discussion and research. But what I'd like to know is what kind of things that we're talking about here might have made a difference in the past, or might make a difference to a business here now to retain them or to keep them. These are ideas that we're talking about, and do we really, and I'm not against them, I'm just trying to get an understanding of, do we need them? Will they help? Will they make a difference? Might they have made a difference in the past? I don't know how you get those answers, but except I know some of the trustees have done some out briefings to people when they've left, so maybe we can get some feedback from that. But that's kind of what I'm wondering about, what kind of things make sense and would it really have an impact on, if we're talking small businesses in town, for example.
And maybe one way to get at that is to find out how many takers there were in some of the other communities. I don't know.
Well, we're not, like some of the things that are referenced in here are definitely things that were targeted at regenerating areas, and I don't think we're talking about that in our town yet. But so it's more like, we've had people come and go and not make it, we've had places, or people move out of here to another location, and what kind of things could we have done that to change that kind of scenario, is what I'm wondering.
What's the threshold to make a difference?
Well, I was just going to hone in on one specific example that might help. And, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And when you see a property, a retail, commercial, whatever it is, and the exterior property has something that is appealing, that draws you in, then in that case, I would have to say that that would be something that could help that business. For example, I'm just going to throw out whatever business had been in the Rock Creek Pizza. If we offered matching funds of some sort in order to expand their facade or bring out a really nice environment for patio dining that with maybe a roof and an awning and lights and whatever it would be to be more aesthetically pleasing that would draw you in, that might help save that business or whatever business that was that obviously it has turned over many times.
Right.
And this may be a way to save, that business now, if they need it.
Yeah, I mean, the two items that we just initially thought would make sense for the program, which we listed at the bottom of the memo, was reimbursement of marketing expenses, advertising. If a business is struggling and they need to try to generate more traffic, we thought that would be maybe a good use of funds, hopefully help them bring in more traffic and build their business and stay rather than having to close the business. And then rebate of town fees, if they wanted to do improvements, or wanted to do a new sign to hopefully, to try to promote their business more. That might be an option. And then above that we had, so those were two that jumped out to us. And then above that, a couple of things that we had that were mentioned here were physical improvements to their storefronts. And then, I guess that's the one thing that comes, you could get into helping them with their lease, but, if they're struggling to make our thought is that they're struggling to make their lease already, do we want to, just add to, or prolong?
I don't think the town can subsidize people's leases. That's, unfortunately, it's...
My compliments to you guys for putting together a really good starting point. I like a bunch of these ideas. The problem I personally have with it is I don't know which ones are the best approach, and so I would be interested in, have we engaged businesses in the discussion? And I think we need to, and I think we need to look at different tiers of businesses. Obviously, some are very cost-sensitive where others aren't cost-sensitive, to determine where we might have the most impact. And then to me, we have to figure out the process for application, the criteria
Right,
for
yep.
selection, who is actually on the committee or on the who selects, maximum size of awards. Does $2,500 do any good? Does $5,000 do any good? Does $7,500? And is breadth of reach better than giving a larger size of award to fewer businesses? So this is why I think this needs a lot of in-depth discussion, and so I'm willing to work within the limited time tonight just to put this forth. I think it's a great starting point, but I'd like to see us within the board, within the staff that's involved, et cetera, figure out a way to really give this the discussion it deserves and come up with you know, how do we go forward with it?
When you mentioned we may not want to throw money towards leases, is that for existing businesses or for new businesses?
No,
or-
that's for existing businesses.
Yeah, I would agree with that,
I would
too.
say probably new businesses as well.
Yeah, maybe there's an opportunity with the new businesses that we give them some relief in sales tax revenue for the first year or something, especially if they maybe hire X number of local people for their staff. Like if it's a small business, maybe they hire at least one person, then they get some relief from sales tax revenue. Some of the other things that I'd like to see, and this would involve more of the chamber's involvement, and that's working with the Small Business Administration and their arm SCORE, where they offer all kinds of programs to small businesses and communities, and we could actually set up a whole series of programs from how to use QuickBooks properly, how to advertise, how to build a solid business plan. But I think we also need to have intro and exit interviews with every business in town at one point or another, so we can learn from the mistakes that some businesses have made and has caused them to leave town, and we can share that information with new businesses. For example, up at the Safeway area, I like what Deborah's saying there, but you know, some of the things I think some of the businesses expect, that they're going to get all this revenue in the summer times from the traffic at the field, the ball fields. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, because they don't have the storefronts that back up to the field, so it's not easy access. They have to walk, the customers have to walk around to the front. So some of those things, that's what we learned from Janice at Baskin-Robbins, that she was somewhat under the impression she was going to have a little bit more access to the community or the people who go to the ball fields. So those are the things that we need to learn from businesses and then share with new businesses so they know what to expect.
And I would agree with that. And I think Heather is in tune with a lot of the businesses through the chamber, and I know Paul met with her on this prior to it going in the packet. So, yeah, we're
Okay.
starting
And
those.
something
that
else I'd
dialogue.
like to find out more about is the business licenses that we require, especially for home-based businesses. And I'm wondering if we can have that discussion about, can we make that where they don't have to do that anymore, where they don't have to pay the fee and don't have to get the license, but maybe that we require them to join the chamber, and that if it's a $50 a year fee or whatever it is, that $50 actually gets them membership into the chamber, as opposed.
If they, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, but if they don't need a business license unless they're collecting sales tax. And the reason for the business license is so
Right.
we can keep track of who's supposed to be submitting sales tax revenue to the town.
Okay.
So,
I've just been told that there's a lot of home-based businesses that won't come out, and which seems odd to me, but that they won't make themselves recognized because they're concerned that they're going to have to get this license and pay this money for this, and it's going to be something other than what they are expecting. So,
Chris, a question on that. In our town code, does it make that crystal clear that only if you're a home-based business who is required to collect sales tax, do you have to have a license?
No, it's not that clear. It says anybody doing any work, any business that collects the retail sales tax. So it's not just home-based businesses.
so
But
yeah, it doesn't make
it's
the,
that if
doesn't
they
make the
collect retail
distinction.
Sales tax.
But I thought there was, did we get rid of it? I thought there was a broader thing in the town code that says home-based businesses must be registered with the town or something to that effect.
I don't believe so. I'd have to, we'll
Okay,
check.
yeah.
We'll check.
And in future discussions of this, maybe if we just include that on the memo, that would be great.
I mean, feedback from the board, just in this quick setting, on like the comment about subsidizing leases is good for us, because then we start to narrow down the field. So if there's, anything else that jumps out to the board that just doesn't make sense, that's good feedback as well.
But if I may, there's a danger to assuming a couple of opinions on leases
yeah.
represents the whole board. So if we could have a more systematic discussion in which we really assess how the board as a whole feels on it, I think that would be valuable.
Deborah, did you have some more comments?
Chris Chris already touched on it, so I'm good.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, so would you,
From my perspective, just, I'm going to weigh in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that $75,000 is going to make a big difference in keeping a bit, what's our goal? Our goal, I think, is to keep a business in town financially viable. Whether or not $75,000 is going to be able to do that, I don't know. And whether or not we're going to be able to prove that that's a wise investment, I don't know. I'm happy to do whatever the board feels is most appropriate, but I'd like to have, a 12-month follow-up, say, yeah, we spent this dollar, this business is still in, and this is the retail sales tax that we're collecting, because otherwise it might be spending good money after bad, so that's my only concern.
It might be interesting for the audience just to get this information from CML just a little bit that we just received. It says, never have Colorado cities and towns work harder to improve their local economies. Last year, 3/4 of all municipalities dedicated funds for economic development activities. This year, the number jumped to 85%. Municipalities are involved in a wide range of activity, including business incubation, buy local campaigns, tourism marketing, urban renewal, tax incentives, mini business grants and revolving loan funds, and streamlined approval processes. The results of these economic development efforts are encouraging as reflected in the better 2011 revenue picture. It is estimated that 27,500 new jobs were created in Colorado in 2011. I think this is something that we probably need to include, right, in our discussion on our next week.
Yeah.
Other municipalities are doing it. There's some
well,
good
one
ideas
of our
here.
largest economic development actions that the town ever did was our urban renewal authority for the marketplace, and it's been a tremendous success for the town, I think. So, yeah, I would say that that's accurate.
I mean, we've
Yeah.
discussed buy local campaigns before,
Yep.
marketing tourism, bringing more people to Superior. So,
Well, and I guess that's kind of what I was going to say. I think while the dollars you're talking about, I'm not sure how much of an effect they'd have on businesses, I do think that kind of money spent on something like, a huge push about buy recycled to the residents, or like a focus on certain businesses going around, or other kinds of awards or things like that can have a big impact on a business also. So I wouldn't want to see only financial things, but I think that money spent on some other kinds of things might also matter.
I guess my final comment is, I think it's really the job of government to provide a fertile ground for a business to prosper, and not necessarily try to grow the business or try to keep them in place. If you've done the right, make it easy for people to do business here, have a business-friendly climate, that's fantastic. Going past that, I get a little concerned.
I agree.
So,
75,000 on Superior bucks might make a difference in saying you can only redeem those in Superior businesses. But anyway.
right, my guess is, in terms of like plotting a fertile ground, might be working through the chamber or some other organization. How do you market your business? Because I suspect a lot of these small businesses are having a hard time. I've never really done this. So, what's your business plan?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to market? How are you going to do software? And do more education. I suspect that that's going to have the biggest long-term bang for the buck. But just my opinion.
What's your concern about business incentives? What's your major concern?
If it's not targeted, if it's not long-lasting, that I think you'll give a business $5,000, and they're still going to go belly up if they're not a good business. And so
So
why
your
would
concern
why
is
would you?
free money, basically.
It's free money that's not going to have any long-term impact, unless it's targeted and well spent. So.
Yeah, there was an article in the Camera I think it was last week, about many businesses in the state that have gotten money and ended up going bankrupt, and there's a small percentage of them that were successful. And I would agree with that we can't just be throwing money at businesses, and I think there's a lot of things that we can do, little or no cost. I agree that we've set up a great place in town here for businesses to do business, but unfortunately, I think a lot of businesses come here and say, wow, we see the demographic, we see all the potential of the money here in Superior and the surrounding communities, but they really haven't prepared themselves appropriately to do business long term. And I think that's where the Chamber, the Better Business Bureau, or the Small Business Administration, and SCORE come in. where they actually teach some of these basic things that we put in place before they open their doors, so we know that they're a solid business beforehand. And we may find, some of those businesses may find going through those exercises that maybe it's not a good business for this area, and then they decide not to do it. I'd rather have that than have a business in place for a year, and then they go belly up. It just makes us look bad.
Yep.
Sandy?
Lest my silence be interpreted as agreement, I want to add to this that we as a community, I do believe, have to have the strategic plan and the strategic visioning to say what kind of businesses do we want in this community. Do we just want large businesses? Do we just want national chains? Who do we want in this community to define the character of this community? There will always be those businesses that really help define the character of the community that also tend to be more vulnerable. As a consequence, I do think it is prudent to look at those that can really beneficially be impacted by not that much money. For example, I spoke in reports last week about Rock Creek Sports Grill. I think they're doing some wonderful stuff down there. I was down there again. It was really nicely populated, et cetera, et cetera. They obviously are working on a very tight budget. If we can help them be successful via a reasonably sized grant to perhaps, as Deborah said and other people said, add to their outdoor patio, or they're working with a, is it still a vinyl sign, or it's a vinyl sign, because obviously signage is really expensive, and they're choosing not to spend money in this manner. If we can make a strategic decision that says, that has a grant program out there, they apply for a sign, they're picked, et cetera, that signage may be the difference to bringing in just local folks who know about it and bringing in the regional community who's playing at the ball fields, et cetera. So I think I want to pursue this narrow concept of this program within the context of our broader economic development. I think it's got a great deal of merit. When we broaden out to the whole realm of economic development, we lose our bearings. So I am very comfortable working on small programs that could have substantial impact.
Yes, Sandy, that's a good example, Rock Creek Sports Bar. Some of the things that they'd like to do is, besides the signs, they'd like to put patio furniture out there so people in the summertime can enjoy it out there, but they'd also like to have those big retracting garage doors so that they can open up that front in the summertime so that there's easy access in and out of there. Things like that, is that affordable for them to do now? Probably not, but maybe if there's a program in place, that's great.
We can help with the signs, though.
What's that?
With the signage, we can help with that, at the very least, couldn't we? No?
We don't have anything in place. No.
We don't. Like, isn't Panera's getting a sign, like a big sign?
They are, but they're paying for that.
Can I ask a question kind of off the topic? I noticed that Sears has a sign up, but it's across Marshall Road, I think.
Yeah, on that tenant.
Oh, so I guess
On that
traffic
tenant
coming
sign.
from
Yeah.
the Boulder direction. Then they
Just
can-
another
Okay.
way to get their name out there.
Okay.
So we'll plan on just having this as a discussion item for the retreat, and continue, and then get further input, and then we can start to refine a specific program for the board to approve. Okay.
You know, one of the things that I'm kind of excited and disappointed at the same time is that Trader Joe's is finally coming to Colorado, but it's not Superior. They're
And the
coming to
manager
Boulder.
is hot on the trail.
He is? Okay.
Yeah, we
'Cause that is
we
a
sent them some
place.
information, and I had discussions with the Louisville city manager, and they've had discussions with them, and they told us they're familiar with the area, but they're looking, at least in the initial, for populations of 100,000
So
people.
Boulder and Denver,
Yeah.
for now, yeah.
So,
That's going to be a home
Are-
run, I'm telling you.
Aren't they also looking for a ready-to-move-in facility?
correct, yeah.
If I may, I'm not willing to concede defeat on that one. I think we've always got to stay in the game. We are a regional population that we can't view ourselves as tiny little Superior. We've sort of adopted in casual parlance this gateway to Boulder County sort of thing. We are the gateway to Boulder County. Broomfield, Louisville, us on the way to Boulder, down to Denver, et cetera, and I don't want us to be in the position of conceding defeat before we've really gone out there and fought the battle. So I'd like to, even if we fail on this, I'd like us to use it as a test ground to see what we can do to really be a player in this decision. So that's where I am on it.
Also, the pad for Ethan Allen, aren't they looking for a tenant?
They're looking to either sell the property or build on it, but that site's not big enough.
That would be,
For Trader Joe's? Yeah, no.
sort of like the Costco version
You need
size.
Right.
Like Sam's Club size?
Like the same clothes size. Okay, so anything else on this? Do you feel like you have some information to move forward with? Do you have any questions from the staff
No, I
perspective?
mean, we'll just plan on having some additional discussion at the retreat, I think.
Okay. Then let's move on to the purchasing policy. Also, I'm sure that we won't finalize anything tonight, and more people will have things to add, but why don't we start?
So the purchasing policy was adopted by the board back in June of 2008. We haven't, no changes have been made to it since that time. The board requested towards the end of last year that this item be one of the work session discussion items early on in the year, so we've scheduled it for the board's discussion. We're not proposing any changes and interested in the board's discussion on it. I can go over the specifics of the policy if you'd like, but to save time, I thought I would just open it up to the board.
Okay. Anybody have thoughts about it? I think, well, my initial thought was I'm glad that we finally put this on paper. Had never really, didn't seem like we ever had a very official policy, and I was glad that we did this when we did. But like all things, it's good to review from time to time and see if any tweaking needs to be done. Or that is my perspective. People have thoughts? Chris?
Yeah, just, I don't, my initial thought on this is that we certainly don't want to increase our workload on the board by having a purchasing policy that is real low, that we have to approve every single thing that comes through here. But at the same time, we all have to be accountable for how we spend money, too. So those are pretty much my 2 cents in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to put my 2 cents in way back when this was approved. I had just been elected, and my initial response to this was I wanted everything to come through the board so that I had more of a handle of what was being spent. And I did not vote for this, and my opinion still stands the same.
So what would you
So-
like to see different in the
I would like to
policy?
see it be at 15,000, much like Louisville.
In terms of the purchasing authority for the
Correct.
town staff?
For budgeted and unbudgeted, everything.
Everything.
And can I ask you, Matt, what would be the impact on you and the town if that were to happen?
Well, the largest impact will be on our operations departments, parks, and public works. When you start to lower the spending threshold, we have to schedule it for a board meeting. So, if they have a project that's
It's time sensitive?
yeah, it's time sensitive. There's a delay, so. Yeah, that's the largest impact is on the 2 operating divisions in town. So.
Lisa?
The issue about how often we let out contracts and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. I don't see that in here, and I just wondered where that
Yeah,
formally
it's-
is adopted.
It's in
I missed it?
here, it's every 4 years,
Thanks.
or as directed by the
Yeah.
board, if you would like
Before I
it
was
sooner.
Thanks.
It's in here.
Several items. One, I feel like this policy has to be very explicit on what it can and cannot be used for. I would like to see it expressly exclude personnel matters. I don't think it's ever appropriate to use purchasing authority for personnel matters. I also would like to have complete transparency to the town board and to residents on what has been authorized under the policy in terms of actual expenditures. And I would suggest a periodic, and in my case, I would prefer a once-a-month addendum to, one of the town board meetings that month that says, here are the items that fell under, so that we are not surprised to find what has been purchased under it, which I have been surprised several times since I've been elected. I would also like to see us, I don't know where it falls, be committed to putting on the website, several residents have asked for this, a list of town payments, via checks or however it's done, that has a link directly to the homepage. So anybody who wants to see how we spend our money specifically can see that. And my instinct right now is to agree with the $15,000 limitation. I'm just more comfortable with that.
So, any response about I thought that there was access to the checks page, right?
So that is on the website, and we started putting a hard copy down here at Town Hall after we got a request from George Governor. So,
If I might, it's on the town website, but it's, unless you've moved it since I last looked for it, it was somewhat buried deep. And I don't think it should be buried deep. I think there should be a link directly there that anybody who wants to go, anybody in the world who wants to go there and see how it is we spend our money can see it, and that it's front and center, not something somebody has to search for.
Elio?
So, I agree with the transparency issue and the personnel issue, but I'm very comfortable with the $25,000 limit, because I wouldn't want to slow things down for this town and have, wait for our meetings to get approval of certain things. It's worked so far. I think we definitely need to separate the personnel issue. That's different. But as far as expenditure is concerned, I'm comfortable. 25 is reasonable.
Joe?
Couple of things. First, I think if this was misconstrued in the past, and apparently it was, and I don't know how, because this applies to purchase of goods and services, and that's very explicit. So let's, and when we talked about discussing this, I was thinking more in terms of, we should have this discussion, update this, get approval levels where everybody's comfortable with, and by the way, I'm comfortable with 25,000, but I'm not going to fall on my sword over that. But other authorities, hiring, firing, settling, litigation, that is not purchasing, and that's what we really need to discuss or understand, because that's the confusion we had in the past, and it's a little different. And something else to address, and maybe it gets addressed in the budget process, but it's not clear to me. It's when does purchases become a project? Individual purchases of a certain threshold all of a sudden become, the one example becomes a sign policy, that we have, signs out there, each of which were under 25, and people felt like they should have been able to look at those signs and approve what we were doing sign-wise, and not necessarily each purchase. But so, and that's a really tough nut to crack, but somehow defining, authority to do a project, or defining what a project is and tying that into what the board, when the board has to be involved in that, is kind of something we should address somehow, and either not here or maybe in, again, some other authority document, signature authority, that kind of thing. That's kind of my thinking. I'm pretty happy with the purchasing policy as it is.
Chris, Lisa?
The only thing I would add to that is if there's whatever the ceiling is, if there's a project that comes in under the ceiling, but the bid was lowballed, and then it ends up costing more, and it goes over what that ceiling is, then it definitely has to come back in front of the board for some explanation as to why it went up so much higher. So I'd like to see that somehow.
Yeah, and other than the change orders section in here, you mean, because that would require a change order be approved. If
Okay.
So it has the contract approved amount, and then if there's changes to the scope of work or whatever, and then there's a change order.
Right.
And it's above the approved, that would have, so right now it's in here at 15%. Would have to come back to the body that approved the original contract. So, for instance, if one of the items on here tonight is purchase of a vehicle, and it's at $38,000, if that, we went and we're going to buy this, and we added a whole bunch of stuff to this vehicle, and it's 15% more than that 38%, it'd have to come back to the board, is the way that reads now.
So if the spending authority is $25,000 and a project you approve originally cost $24,000, but then for some reason it goes to $25,500, that's below the 15%. But I would still like to see it come back to the board in that case, because it is
Right,
going
yeah.
over.
That's a.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lisa?
I guess I was comfortable with 25, and I recognize and agree with what Chris said about the 24 and all that. It does seem like that's a little bit of a loophole that could use some addressing.
Sandy?
I couldn't agree more with all of Joe's points. I do think it has to exclude the other authorities, such as hiring and firing, and I have been very concerned that we avoid sort of dismantling a project into individual purchases and thus have it approved. It could literally be a $96,000 project that's for $24,000 purchasing policy authorizations. And I would like to see that expressly dealt with in this policy, that I'd like to see the language put together in some manner that puts that on paper and says that is disallowed.
And when you say hiring, can you clarify what you mean by hiring? I don't understand that part of it.
That's personnel matters.
Personnel matters.
That's not necessarily hiring, but personnel.
You mean settlement agreements?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Severance packages?
Yeah.
Well, just have to be clear that that's what we're talking about, as opposed to hiring within a
Hiring,
budget
yeah.
that you've already approved,
Right.
correct?
Right.
Oh, I would have to think about that. I am not prepared to limit it to settlement agreements. I think if personnel matters are involved, I'm not quick-minded enough right now to give you some scenarios, but I would like to go back to what I originally suggested, is that personnel matters be expressly disallowed under this, any personnel matter.
Sandy, just so I'm clear, I'm sorry, Lisa. So if Matt, if he had an employee that resigned, $50,000 a year salary, and then he decided to hire a new person at the same salary, you would require that to come back for the board?
I just have to, I want to address it. For example, when Matt has hiring authority, I don't want to get in the way of regular hiring authority policies that are longstanding. What I do want to get away from is any surprises that happen in this. And I haven't put my thoughts completely around this. I would like us to seriously consider personnel issues by the time we achieve a final draft of this and make sure we've considered what is allowable across the board, what is allowable, and particularly what is not allowed under purchasing policy. So I'll give it more thought, but I'm not prepared to address all that now.
Matt, did you want to, you were leaning forward, do you want to say something?
And maybe I should, I understand if to add a provision about settlement agreement or severance package. I think that's clear. Anything else related to personnel, I don't think I can support.
I think that's
And I think
micromanaging you,
Right.
so.
Right, that's why I'm not, that's
Lisa
why I'm
and-
in a quandary.
Lisa
So the
and
example
Nelia.
that comes to my mind, and the reason why I could understand why you would be concerned about all personnel agreements is, let's say that it's determined that we're having the Morgul, and oh my gosh, there's more crowds than we expected, and you need to hire a temporary person at $5,000 or $3,000 or $1,000. Under this agreement, you'd have to come forward to the board to get something like that approved if all personnel matters could not be addressed. So that to me would be a problem. That would be really tying the hands of the manager.
Elia?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Lisa. I think that there's a concern that this overreach actually ties your hands. And I'm so against micromanagement from up here. I just can't stand it. We hired you to do a job. You're capable of doing the job. You hire the right people, and they perform or don't perform. If they perform, good for you. If they don't perform, you have to answer to us. But I don't want to be making those decisions for you. I don't want you to feel like we're breathing down your neck with personnel issues. That's not our job.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, so this is just a purchasing
Right.
policy, right? We're not talking,
No, we
there's
aren't.
no
I was
personnel
trying-
issue. I know where you were going, but this is just purchasing. You know, if we want to talk about a personnel issue, then let's do that and hire Mountain States to go over all that and whatever. But just to be clear, we're just talking about purchasing. I don't care what the level is. 25,000 seems like it works fine. If it's 15,000, that's fine too. I think seeing the bills paid makes sense, but I don't want to see every roll of toilet paper
Yeah, I
that's
know.
bought. You know, if it's over $2,000 or $5,000, you know, send a list of those. But I don't want to see. I mean, maybe we need to put everything out there, but I don't really want to see that data. So I just like to see kind of the highlights. Sandy, I think you.
Yes, I wanted to go to what is now 5D in here. I heard somebody mention it, I think, in response to a suggestion somebody else gave. It's non-budgeted purchases, any non-budgeted purchases in excess of 15,000. And so I missed the comment somebody had made earlier, if they would just reiterate.
I was just asking Deborah if that's what she was referring to, was at $15,000, non-budgeted and budgeted items. So if something's already budgeted,
Right.
you know, I'd say why.
You know what a good example of that was?
Well,
The
then-
bleachers, right? That was not budgeted
Yeah.
at the time, the bleachers, and it was considerably less. It was like 4,000 or something. You still brought it before the board, which I think was a nice, thing to do, but I'm
Currently-
very comfortable with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Deborah?
Currently, it's 25,000, budgeted or non-budgeted.
No,
No, I think 15,000 for non-budgeted.
5D.
Yeah, that's correct. 15,000 for non-budgeted.
You mean was?
No, it is now.
Okay.
It currently is, yeah.
25 is for budgeted items.
Okay.
Other thoughts about this? I know that RTAC wants to look at the environmental
Purchasing aspect of this, so if I understood your comments, so. Are you
I'm
not sure if there's any,
clear
I'm
on
not sure there's
the-
any
amount.
changes.
Yeah, so,
No settlements.
Yeah, just, I mean, you could put a sentence in there that says purchasing only and is not applicable to
Yeah,
personnel, you know, if that.
yeah.
I think that's important to point out, though, Sandy, because we've thrown this, since I've been on the board, we've thrown this $25,000 discretionary spending, and I've always interpreted it to be for anything, and that's really not the case. So I think it's good to have that discussion that we've got to really define where we draw the line there. And if it's just budget purchases and not personnel, then I agree with that.
So I guess, I'm sure you're going to get there. Your next point, Matt, is next steps here. So how do you see this sort of working its way through?
well, we'll go through and red line this
Okay.
policy and bring it back for the board consideration.
I don't think you got clear guidance on threshold yet, but
No, that was kind of the one question out there.
I'm good with 25,
I am too, but
I'm good with 25 and 15
25, 15.
on just purchases, yeah.
the way we are now.
No, yeah.
And do you want to, how about a threshold of like what do you have, anybody have a clear-cut level that they want to see the dollars that were spent? Do you have any idea?
$2,000 is fine.
Does that sound like a reasonable number that?
I thought we published all the checks.
I think you can, but, you know, so I think we do, but sometimes you can get lost in the minutia. And then
So
if you
this
can
would
have
be,
like a list of 10 things that
Included
happened.
with the
that-
packet
Yeah.
once a month.
Does that sound difficult, or?
Clarification on that, Andrew. Are we talking on both the website and, I suggested two things. I'd like to see as a town board trustee included in, let's say, once a month in the packet, the purchases that fall within the purchasing authority over whatever threshold, and I'm fine with that. I don't need to see $10,
You know,
$150.
if it's, you know,
But
if we
is
can
that
make
what
it
you're
easier.
thinking on the website as well?
Well, you know, anybody would be able to look at it because it's electronically published, and so they'd have access to that too. But I get your point, and if it was easy, you know, an easier link to find the, I'm losing the term, accounts payable, or what, that's not the term I'm looking for, but whatever that is, you know,
Yeah.
if that's easier to get to, I think that's reasonable too.
I'm happy to start on, with a common policy, just makes it easier on staff. I reserve the right, based on resident comments on the website. If they're not happy, of course, I'd bring that back for more detail.
And just another reminder, we have a hard copy as well that we.
Is there a reason we can't just make a PDF of the hard copy and put it on the website with a homepage link?
Is that the way it is now?
I think it's sort of, we're doing it the other way around, right? We have an electronic copy, and then we, at least this is my impression, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have an electronic copy, and then we print some out if we need to for people that don't have computer access.
Actually, Mayor, we have both. Every week, we print out all the bills. It goes on the finance page. That, you know, seems to be the most logical spot where folks may go for what the town's spending. Very first report on the finance page. Could we put it in places on the webpage? Sure. I think we get concerned about cluttering the whole page.
No, I agree, so.
We have that information there. We have a printout.
Let me
book
look at the
here.
website.
It includes every expense. Speaking to the other question, if you want to identify different thresholds, I'm sure Mr. Stone and his crack staff could, do some reports that would filter and give you reports.
Could you, yeah, I mean, because it's really, whenever you read a document that has 100 things in it, it's really sort of like the green building practice or whatever it was. You can't understand what's going on if you could have some, pick a threshold that you think is reasonable and print that out, so it's like 20 or something like that. Otherwise,
We can try a threshold that could be easy enough to change. Mr.
Okay.
Stone may kick me, but I think it should be an easy enough report to
Yeah.
generate.
I appreciate, Paul, that it's on the finance page, but if I'm having difficulty locating it when I need it, as I work through the homepage, et cetera, I think other people probably are as well. I don't think it would clutter the homepage, so I'm going to beg to differ on that aspect. If you can use exactly the same thing you already have on the finance page. I'm all for that, no extra work needed. I'll accept that as a report I get as well. But we've had several
so-
comments on that from residents, and I'd really like to see the ease of access directly on the homepage.
So, how it's looking is it's under department, so I'm looking at the website, so it says town government, maybe it could be like town board and then town departments, I don't know, just,
Yeah, we can,
I think you can
that's
massage
easy
that
enough
around.
to retitle
Yeah.
those.
Can we just have a link that says monthly expenditures, or?
Yeah,
That's the
if
only
we
thing
did
is,
that,
though,
we
like-
would put that on the homepage.
You don't want to get it too cluttered, so then it might be hard to find it, so I'm just, looking at the website here. So I guess what I'd say is, why don't we give town staff some discretion about how to make that? I think they understand our concerns, and if they could massage that a little bit and get back to us when this comes back next time around, does
We
that
can
sound
put a
fair?
link on the homepage, and we can track how many times it's
Sure.
visited
Right.
and see.
Yeah, my question is, why not go for ease of access? What are the concerns about having it
I don't
direct
think
link on the homepage?
I don't think it's ease of access, it's just, what exactly do you want on the homepage of the website, so that it's easy for people to navigate, so. I don't have any strong feelings, but, I'm sure our crack staff is going to be able to give us some options. Okay? So, thanks very much. Let's take a minute or two, and then we'll start the regular meeting. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a Town of Superior Board of Trustees and Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors and Superior Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners for January 23rd, 2012. And Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Okay. Mayor Andrew Muckle,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ian Zagors,
Here.
Trustees Joe Cirelli,
Here.
Ms. Hanson,
Here.
Sandy Kennedy, Lisa Scamas,
Here.
Deborah Williams,
Here.
Town Manager Matt Riley,
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry,
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Hardy.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Trustee Williams?
I'd like to pull 7H.
So 7H to follow the consent agenda. Trustees Kumats?
That was the same one.
Okay. Any other changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion with that change by Trustee Skumat, second by Trustee Williams. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. And anybody would like to start this evening? Trustee Hanson, start.
Attended a ProStack meeting last week, and first item of discussion was the naming of 3 parks. There's a huge list of suggested names that we went through every single one of them. My personal favorite was the Martin Toth Memorial Park.
Yes.
No
that was a
offense
good
to
one.
Martin. What the group came up with was that the park may want to consider having in the name something of a historical significance and/or something that references the wildlife, the natural wildlife in the area. So the next step that the group is going to take is go to, or I believe Jim Payne has already gone to the Historical Commission to seek their input on historical names that could possibly be put on the park. We next discussed the Town 9 Park and what are the next steps for the park. And the next steps is to issue RFPs for design and get the grant cycle started. The grants need to be submitted by the 1st of March. But as far as the RFPs go, this board should see RFP proposals as soon as next month on Town 9 Park for design. I sat in a meeting with Matt and Paul this morning with Explore. Good meeting. I was pretty much just a fly on the wall there just to be in touch with what's going on. It appears that there's still a ways to go, but the Explore group is very invested in this project and is working hard to get things in place. From a town perspective, I know I don't need to say it, but just impressed with Matt and Paul. We're definitely in good hands with their negotiating with these people because some of the stuff that I heard today was great, and very impressed with Matt and Paul.
Thanks.
And that's it.
All right, Trustee Cirelli.
Last
Friday.
Friday, I attended a meeting with Trustee Gregores, you might guess, as well as town manager, deputy town managers, the McCaslin Interchange Committee meeting with Louisville. And we went through a process of looking at some potential designs for the interchange to consider long-term and short-term, and what would we be interested in pursuing in further depth, and got it narrowed down to 3 that really are only within only 3 that could even be close to being in the price range of a short-term solution, short-term versus long-term being. Long-term is the time when the whole bridge and Route 36 has to be raised up and that's down the road a long ways, and we're looking for something fixed much sooner than that. So there's 3 potential designs that were looked at for further study and actually will be presented in a public meeting that I believe is going to be scheduled for February 2nd here at Town Hall, and there should be notice, but the public should come to that, have these three possible options explained along with the pros and cons of each, and give comments on them so that we can then have a better idea of which direction we want to go. This process is going to go on for, let's see how far, I had that piece of paper handy, through the rest of the spring of trying to get direction on where we want to go on the interchange improvement and get something going. The two leading candidates still are the one in the EIS for the double left, and the other leading candidate that has the least impact and cost-wise and on the bridge is the diverging diamond, which people need to come and have that explained to them on February 2nd. But it's a real possibility too. The third choice involves current configuration of the bridge with a possible roundabout at the further turnoff for traffic towards Boulder from Superior, and we'll see where that goes. There's not a lot of that has the benefit of fitting within the configuration of the current bridge probably, but it has a lot of downsides to it. But we're going to see just how bad that or good that could be.
I like the
Anyway.
upside of $3 million, though. I
Pardon?
like the upside of $3 million versus
Yeah.
35 to 40 million.
Yeah, well, that's 35 to 40 million was the part that we said, well, that's long-term stuff.
That's so long-term, none of us will be here even when that happens.
That's
so.
not on the, that's, we just don't see that as, you know. Anyway, that was a very good meeting. We're moving forward, emphasizing our need, our desires to have something in place on the short term, very, very much on the short term.
So if I could ask just two questions.
Uh-huh.
One, this is going to be, where's the meeting being held in?
Here.
Is it
We'll
here?
be here at Town Hall.
And we're widely publicizing that?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen
Yeah.
anything about it yet.
We're going to send out, well, we'll send out mailers.
Okay.
And e-blast and newsletter and, well, not newsletter because it's February 2nd, but
Sure.
e-blast.
Since this is, we do a lot of things in the town, and I think hopefully they're mostly are all good, but the thing that impacts the life of residents, I think, on a daily basis is going through this interchange, so as much public comment we can have would be, I think, very beneficial. So that's number one. Number two, I have to ask, so they felt that the other quarter diamond right turn was not feasible for some reason. Did they look at that or exclude that for some particular reason?
The one that we have always wanted.
That one.
Well, for two reasons. Well, I don't think it's
Since they
not
were,
on Louisville's table.
yes, well, but I think what the contract was that they were supposed to look at the
Yeah.
universe of opportunities, right? So
When
hopefully they looked at that and they analyzed it one way or the other. And
Well, the problem with that one is it's specifically was not accepted by the EIS, number one. Number two, it would involve apparently some taking of land. But
okay,
the comparisons, if you remember, the agreement is to, if we don't do that, to find something that gets us comparable results. So,
so they'll model that
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
base case, and they'll show that any of these are going to be comparable.
I cannot guarantee that that's the process, frankly.
But if you're interested, it'd be great for people to show up and to see it. I think there's the state of Utah has, especially the Divergent Diamond one, they have a great little 5-minute video that explains it really well.
Have you driven through it?
Oh, I haven't seen it, but I've seen the video and it looks really good. The whatever is decided, I think will in the 7 to 15 million range, whether it's the dual left or the Divergent Diamond, will probably get us through for the next 10 years, 10, 15 years, which to me is long-term, actually, in some ways. The other, getting a new bridge,
Yeah.
or there's another option of having a pedestrian and bike bridge next to the McCaslin Bridge. We're talking about, $35 to $40 million. This is really long-term. The other thing is a possible Dahlia extension that would be going, especially when they raise 36, just to connect the two cities in not having to use the McCaslin interchange, and there's
That in
potential
itself, yeah.
reduction of traffic by 10% on McCaslin, and that would basically would connect to Superior, Town Center, or Marshall.
That in
So-
and of itself, though, would be long-term,
Yeah,
because
that's
it would
another
have to
long-term.
be
Right.
when 36 is raised, so there
Right.
could be an underpass.
And there's agreement from both sides on that. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer, but that's another long-term thing, so. But I wanted to say that this meeting really was very cordial. I think both sides, I mean, there's a lot of collaboration between the two cities, and it's not as contentious as it used to be the first meeting I attended a few years ago, so it's getting better.
Great. Trustee Skumatz.
Well, and I'm guessing that one of the reasons that it's more cordial is because we've caved on the one that we cared about most before we even get started, and I have a really big issue with that. So I'm very disappointed not to see the one that we want on the list. No wonder they're happy.
But CDOT is not, we have that too, so.
But if we cave on it before we even start, it's
just-
gutted.
I just want to make sure that it's part of the RFP, hopefully, that they've looked at this, because that was my understanding. I mean, I didn't look at it myself, but they were going to look at all available options, of which clearly that's, like an option that we've all talked about for a long time. So just want to make sure it's in there somewhere, not lost somewhere along the way.
And actually,
If it's not on paper, it's not going to happen.
the consultant that was chosen was part of, one of the key staff members of that consultant was one of the consultants that helped us with designing that northeast loop. So, I mean,
Were they one that got the option we want sort of thrown out
Pardon?
on
Say that
the
again?
other project? So if they worked with us,
No,
did they
they
work with
weren't
CDOT
part
on
of
the
the
one that
E-
caused our option
Yeah.
not to be considered?
they weren't part of the EIS process.
Well, I guess I don't want to beat a dead horse or dead asphalt or whatever the terminology would be here, but I want at least a paragraph about, yeah, we looked at this, can't possibly do it, and these are the reasons why. Seems like that's a fair
Matt, can you-
request.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's worth, I like that.
Okay, thanks. Anything else?
No.
Okay, Trustee Skumatz.
All right.
I didn't see on the, and maybe I'm just going blind, but since I missed something else in what we talked about, but I did not see on the look ahead a discussion of the trash contract for next time or any other time. I couldn't see it on the list, so.
Yeah.
In the look up, so could it be added to the next meeting?
It was going to be added to, the committee will report back to the board, and then we had a 90-day extension, so the first meeting in March is when I was planning on bringing it back after the board received input from the committee and gave direction.
I just think putting it on that last one will no doubt cause problems. If we've got results before that, let's do it on an earlier meeting so that if it has to carry over, we're not stuck in a 90 days, oh my God, we have to decide this week.
Well, it was the first
could we-
meeting in March, which gave you a second meeting in March to,
Okay.
if
I'd
you
like
want to
to,
come back, but
that's fine. I
just
wanna-
give the
it's not on
committee as
any-
much time, yeah.
Right now, it's not on anywhere.
understand.
It's not on the left-hand margin
Yeah.
at all, so that I can determine. So that would be great. And then if, maybe in the look-ahead, or not the look-ahead, but your weekly thing, could you provide us with some, or maybe I can just ask for it separately, but an update on sort of bike race stuff would be valuable to me. If
Yeah.
that means individual one to me or others, I don't care.
I will include something in the digest, maybe
Thanks.
not this week, but
That's fine.
fine, in the next.
I attended, I think, an RCAC meeting and a consortium meeting, neither of which had anything particularly remarkable.
Sounds good. Let's see, I think just two things, and I won't do individual meetings, but had a variety of discussions regarding the fast tracks tax. Yes, exactly. I'll do it once, and I probably can't even do it then. There's this on, I think RTD, they'll be approving that shortly. I think it's going to be in March, if I understand their meeting timeline schedule. I'm pretty certain that they're going to recommend putting that on the ballot. With that, however, given the $500 million shortfall in the rail project, they're discussing a few options, and I think that Trustee Williams talked about that last time as well. So,
Yeah, so that's ongoing. CDOT is thinking about putting either in conjunction with RTD or separately a sales tax for statewide road improvements. And so I would like some board direction on how these discussions are from my perspective when I do these meetings. I'm officially being neutral on all those. I think it's sort of been the town's perspective that we don't weigh in unless it, affects municipal government directly. I don't see them affecting municipal government directly, so if others feel otherwise, just let me know so I can weigh in one way or the other. So,
Can you reiterate what you're discussing as far as, is it RTD?
right, so RTD is, I think this November, is going to go out for a sales tax to accelerate the construction of the Fast Tracks program, which also includes the rail, which that's the concerning part right now. And that, I'm sure that they'll be asking for government support regarding the tax itself. Sometimes we do resolutions if it affects town operations. I don't see this actually affecting town operations, but if others feel otherwise, let me know. Okay. I think that was the highlight, and the only other thing is I'm apparently term limited on urban drainage, and so February is my last meeting there, so they'll be looking for somebody else from Boulder County, but this is an FYI.
Oh, really? Huh, they have term limits?
Not really, but the governor has decided that he's term limiting all commissions, and so that if you've been on there for 2 terms, that you're not officially term limited, but from a policy perspective, I believe that's what's happening.
So he's cutting you off?
Cutting me off. Yeah.
There's no, okay.
No parting gift or anything. So, yes. Thank you. Trustee Williams.
I attended a OSAC meeting as well as a Dr. Cog meeting and an advisory committee chair and board liaisons meeting. Nothing big to note on any of them. I'm just going to be quick here because I know this is going to be a very long meeting tonight. Dr. Cog has next month their yearly retreat. It's February 24th and 25th at the Warwick Hotel in downtown Denver. And if there's anyone who wants to attend that along with me, let me know and I can put you on the list. So, 24th and 25th. And we're encouraged to invite as many board members are interested as well as our board representative and our alternate. So, more the merrier. And I highly recommend it because they are incredibly well organized, and the facilitator is just amazing. So it's just kind of a different perspective in how they run a retreat. Good to go to, at least once. Let's see here. Also, I attended school accountability committee meetings at El Dorado K through 8 and Monarch High School, and I do that as a community rep representing Superior. And at this time, I'm just going to note that for Monarch High School, there is not as much collaboration that is needed as El Dorado or Superior Elementary because it's not in our town. I'm going to finish out the year there, and if anyone else is interested in doing that, they certainly can. But I think I will be moving on to something a little bit more close to home.
Thank you. Trustee Gregorus.
Just the meeting with Joe, the US 36 McCaslin interchange meeting last Friday. I did have a question to the board and maybe to you, Matt. What Trustee Skumatz brought up as far as March is concerned, the second meeting is March 26th, which is right smack into spring break. I'm going to be out of the state, so I'm not going to be here. We fall. This happens every year. Will there be enough people to even have a meeting?
Yeah, last year, I didn't bring it up again this year because last year we had the discussion and it was determined, except for that second meeting in December, which was canceled, we would just plan on having the meeting, and if we end up not having a quorum, then we would cancel the meeting. So that's how I was going to proceed this year,
What?
unless you wanted to consider specific.
Why don't,
Well, if there's specific discussions or, the trash contract and all that, I wouldn't want to have like 3 members not here.
Right,
That-
yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
decisions like that.
why don't I ask the town clerk to poll people, because I suspect a lot of people, board members, will not be here,
Okay.
including myself.
Including myself.
Okay.
Okay. Trustee Pennington?
Had a historical commission meeting. It was a full agenda. Of particular note was ProStack invited historical commission into the town amenities naming process so that they could give their opinions on residents who might merit a an amenity of some sort, not necessarily a park, something, and the Historical Commission greatly appreciated being included, so thanks to them. Also did the Chairs and Liaisons meeting, of course. I wanted to, a resident in public comment last meeting addressed the potential impacts of summer US 36 construction on town traffic and how we intended to deal with that, and I just wanted to raise the issue. Matt, maybe
Yeah.
you can address it.
We don't have anything specific yet, but our traffic consultant is starting to look at what those impacts might be and what we can do to mitigate impacts from that construction. So
Great.
we'll hopefully have something to the board in the next couple of months for them to just take a look at.
Right. And then lastly, we're having a town board retreat on January 31st, and I just I would like to know how that agenda is being set, and
So I have a meeting on Wednesday to discuss that retreat and finalize discussion and agenda. So I don't have anything specific for you right now. I mean, the goals for sure, roles and responsibility of board members, economic development are the top 3 things that I know for sure will be on there. And then I guess any others that the board specifically wanted to discuss.
so if we have a item that we'd like to be added to that, do we just email you, or how do we go
Yeah, I would
about
say
it?
CC the rest of the board,
Okay.
and if there's any question, we can.
Okay, excellent, that's good enough, thanks, that's all.
Town manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Pull up my item here. So the first item is this attachment that I had for the board on the town board representatives and committee assignments for Dr. Cog, Boulder County Consortium of Cities, Rocky Flats, those, as well as liaisons for town committees and the finance committee. Typically, we do that after the election, which would have been, that's the last time we looked at this, was April of 2010. But since we moved the election from April to November, I just wanted to see if there was anything that the board wanted to change, since we're not going to review it again until November after the election. My assumption was no, that you were happy with the assignments you have, but just wanted to give you that opportunity. So, and then I guess there was 2 items that weren't included in the assignments. One was Jefferson Parkway. We don't have anything. It's kind of just whoever wants to go goes. And then the other one was we had a request from the US 36 Commuting Solutions Group to see if the board wanted to assign any board member specifically to attend those meetings. And typically, staff attends them. Beth Moisky, the assistant town manager, attends, but those were the only 2 kind of things that aren't currently on the list. And we're happy to continue to attend those, aren't we, Beth? But, and if there's no changes, we'll just wait and revisit it in November.
I'm good waiting until November because the reconfiguration of the board.
Right.
Trustee Pennington?
Just for a point of information, Matt, I think it was communicated to you, Louisville Superior Library Board currently meets every odd month, not the even months, 6:30 PM
Okay.
on the second
Yeah,
Thursday.
we had pulled that information from their website, which it says every, the second Thursday of each month, but we'll update the list
Yeah.
to reflect that.
And it may have changed at the last meeting, but both Deb and I were at the Chairs and Liaisons meeting, so.
We'll confirm and then update the list for the library board.
Does, I'll ask the board, does everybody get the meeting notes or the meeting times for commuting solutions?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And
And
then, oh, go ahead, sorry.
And I'll be happy to attend those informally for now.
So why don't
until
you
wanna
send
appoint somebody.
send the times around? I mean, I think that staff is, anybody, I'd invite anybody to show up and listen to the meetings are interesting.
Well,
The question is whether or not you get on like the executive
Right.
board
yeah.
or whatever for that. I guess we could consider that also, but that's frequently also done
Well,
by staff. But-
We'll make sure and forward that meeting time and date around each month when they meet.
Okay,
to the
great.
board. And then Trustee Hanson, we had discussed about the chamber, and I don't know if you want to talk about that here or wait till,
You know what,
I don't mean to blindside you. Sorry.
no, that's fine. I know the chamber had a meeting today, and I didn't hear back from Kevin yet.
There's been some discussion about maybe a board liaison that goes to the chamber meetings each month, just to communication, let the chamber know what's going on as far as town projects and developments and vice versa. But,
So that's not an official, it's unofficial.
yeah, unofficial.
The proposal was to have the initial proposal was to give the chamber, a chamber representative from the board, one meeting each month, preferably the first meeting of the month, time to present to us what happened in their previous meeting. So what's going on with the chamber board and how we can help and understand what they're doing, and so we can be in sync. Then the next proposal was, well, why don't we reciprocate and let's provide a liaison to them so that we're constantly in touch, because that's one of the goals, I think, from everybody, that we want to be communicating more with the chamber and the HOAs. So I think this is a positive way of doing that.
I agree. Could be, why don't we talk about that at the retreat?
Okay.
Or sometime around that time. I think that
Okay.
would be a good discussion item. Trustee Pennington?
If I could ask, Joe, you've raised the issue a couple of times on board liaison, on planning commission, and it's an area I've never really quite understood. So if you would just take maybe a second to explain it.
Well, the planning commission meets in very formal meetings, sitting like we do, and so there isn't really a place for a board member to participate in that,
That's your chair, you can claim that.
So there may have been board liaisons in the past, but that was way back. I don't see that as being a significant role. On the other hand, somebody other than myself that wanted to understand more about, or be more involved in the planning commission and learn about it, that might be an interesting position for somebody to take on as a liaison if they haven't done it,
But didn't you, I thought I understood that there are actual legal reasons not to
Well,
do this.
Yeah.
that's.
I was told we weren't supposed to go, that we were supposed to decide only on what we heard in these meetings.
That's
So
good.
I'd love to hear
For
more
a
about that
development
again.
application.
Why don't we,
Public hearings we're supposed to hear what's presented to us at public hearings as evidence at our public hearing. So that's the biggest issue.
Why don't we have the town attorney giving a short synopsis of the board participation at the planning commission?
Sure, that you, as you all know, when you all hear a development application, when it comes to you, it's already been to planning commission. When it comes to you, you're not supposed to have, quote, prejudged the application. It's very difficult not to prejudge an application if you've already seen it at planning commission and if you've participated in any way in the discussion. So it's always my advice not to participate in any way at the planning commission level, because that, your comments could come back to haunt you later if you have to vote on it and you're not supposed to have prejudged it. So that's really the extent of it.
So what if we view the planning commission
Just gonna
meetings
say that.
on a regular basis on TV? I mean, it's like, just like being there.
Right, but there's no participation at that point. If you're watching the meeting, you're not participating, you're not commenting on the record, correct?
So we could attend the planning commission meeting and not participate.
Sure, that you can attend them. The biggest problem is this comes up. By attending the meetings or even by watching them on TV, if you prejudice yourself in any way and you don't feel then that you can be completely impartial and not have prejudged the application, then I would recommend not going to them or not watching them.
Okay.
But that's a decision for you to make. If you think that you can watch them and then still be completely impartial when it comes to you, that's fine. Some people feel that they can't because once they've seen I'll just give you an example. If there's a ton of public comment in favor or against a development application at Planning Commission, that may affect how you view the application when it comes to you as a trustee, even if not as many people show up at your meeting. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's a judgment call. You're better off not attending.
Well,
I mean, that's for me.
And that's what many people choose to take that route because you get the recommendation from the Planning Commission. They're supposed to take the comment that they receive, come up with a recommendation, then you look at the recommendation when you get it in your packet and consider it.
So is that just for development applications or for anything that if the planning commission, like they took a vote a couple meetings ago on, the green building codes?
No, green building code is fine. That's not considered what's called quasi-judicial.
Okay.
So it's really only development applications. Green building code is completely fine. That's your legislative determination, and that carries a whole different set of legal guidelines. So you're fine on anything other than an application that comes in, for approval of a planned development, for something like that. Those are the ones you need to be careful.
So there's no issue with us watching the discussion about the
No.
green building codes and we take their lead on that and say this is how, okay.
Exactly.
So can we remove the board liaison from the planning commission then?
Sure. It's entirely your call.
It's not a significant role.
No, I know, but just to avoid this,
Yes.
I would say yes then.
And I'll just mention that, unfortunately, the state statutes actually have a provision that allows a trustee to sit on the planning commission, which places a lot of statutory municipalities in a very difficult spot. But most statutory municipalities have gotten rid of that, so to avoid this whole problem.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Megley?
Oh, yes. We are starting to see some more electric vehicles running around the state because they're actually selling them in the state this year. I actually saw a Chevy Volt on my way into Boulder. So my thought was to not charge any fees to use those two stations we have for the remainder of this year, just as an incentive for people to start using them. So just wanted to give the board an update on that.
Do we get some tracking data on how much they're used then, so we'd have some idea what the demand has been, what the cost has been?
I will check on that, yes.
Matt, is there
Yeah.
any issues with the board members or staff using the charging stations if they had an electric vehicle then, under these circumstances?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We actually, the plan was to convert the Escape to a plug-in electric last year, and we're still thinking about that. So we were going to use one of them for that purpose, so
Okay.
I don't see any issues with
Okay, thank you.
that. Our November sales tax figures were up from 2011 to 2010, so that was good. For the year, we're up about 3%, a little less than 3% in sales tax revenue. Guardian Storage submitted an application to us for some minor architectural modifications to their buildings. The hope is for them to reduce their cost to construct so they can build it all at one phase rather than in two phases. So we're looking at that currently and schedule it for the Planning Commission hopefully on February 7th and then the Town Board at that second meeting in February. So they've secured a lender for the project, and this would be the last thing they would do before submitting their building permit construction plans.
I mean, in terms of noise and in terms of, I would much rather they build it once,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's better if they. I agree. Build it at once. We mailed our annual check to Louisville for the library contribution. And then the last thing was ProStack had looked at the use for Town 9. We have groups that use that field and use it quite a bit. ProStack had looked at, I think, the possibility of dividing that field in half to try to break it up so other groups could use it, and it's not just one group dominating the whole field. We
North, south, or east, west?
North south, Martin says. Thanks, Martin. But the park staff has got a proposal to get some sandstone boulders at a reduced cost, $1,000, which they would use to do this. But I don't remember if the board had any discussion if you actually wanted to do that. I know ProStack had recommended it, but I don't remember if the board had discussed actually doing that. So before we move forward, I wanted to bring it up and see.
If you want to get at least from anybody weigh in, from my perspective, if you want to get the boulders that are reduced rate, fantastic, but don't install them until we have a actual plan about how the park is going to be run for operations and any capital expenditures. So I think that's on ProStack's, if I remember correctly, first quarter plan, and so I don't think I'd install them quite yet.
Could make going out of bounds really painful.
Really painful if you're going after a fly ball.
I actually can't visualize exactly how that's going to be, but I don't want to make the fields dangerous. You know, I had a concern at 3 parks around the bike park. One of those kids comes flying off a bike and hits those boulders that he could get killed, you know, as opposed to skidding on the ground. So I would like us at least to consider the safety component.
Just one of the issues, though, is the ultimate teams come in and dominate that, and we don't have any rules. And we had made a decision not to program the park to prohibit that. But unfortunately, after reaching out to those organizations, it still hasn't worked to keep their field use at a minimum. So now many of the original town folks go to use the field. They can't use the field because they're using the entire field. So I agree with the original town residents at their wits' end on that. They'd like to use their park as opposed to outsiders coming in and owning it. So I think something needs to be done.
Right.
But I guess, you know, it's got to tie in with the Town 9 Park as it moves forward in its design.
I believe I see the chairman of ProStack wanting to mention
Jim
something.
Payne, Clayton Circle Superior, Chairman of ProStack. I'm a little bit blindsided because I didn't know this was coming up tonight. We had spent a lot of time on this in ProStack. There's been a lot of comment from neighbors as a big problem. We've actually had fisticuffs and fights in the park, and something needs to be done. And we had sort of preliminarily come up with this direction back a couple months ago when you were going through right after the budget. So we decided we'd wait until now. So I guess there's some opportunity regarding the boulders, which I hadn't heard about. But maybe we can come back to next meeting or something and lay something before, because we wanted to. This is not an irreversible plan. It would leave plenty of space, but it would discourage the big groups that are taking over the whole park and creating a problem. We've tried signage. We've tried an honor system of 2-hour sign-ups. We've tried meeting with the groups, and nothing has worked. And so we're recommending that we do something now and not wait for the whole park. It's not irreversible, but it could be done quickly. And if there's an opportunity to get the boulders at a good deal, that would be opportune. But I would like the opportunity, Lauren, if you agree, to come back and present that next meeting just quickly. It's not a big deal, but it's important, we think.
Trustee Gogos.
Oh, Jim, so help us understand, when you say you've approached them and it hasn't worked, what does that mean? You've talked to them and you said, listen, you're dominating this space, and they're saying what? We don't care?
They just, they're nice people. They say they'll do what they can, but it doesn't happen, and there are more and more groups. I mean, originally it was a men's ultimate frisbee group, then there was a women's and a men's. Now Monarch High School has gotten into the act, and It's a sport that just is, very, very rough and very rigorous, and they take over the whole field because they need the distances. We don't have any way of, unless you're going to, staff can't do it remotely. They have to have people to go over there and police it if they were going to enforce this. And this has been going on for a year, and we're kind of at wit's end here.
So what I would say is that this park is to be, used by original town. That's the whole point of it, and it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. We're finally getting close. I believe that by the end of the summer we'll have it completed. But it's just like kids. If they can't manage themselves, then the parents have to step in. And in this case, we are the parents. So if they can't be polite and move away after an hour and a half, 2 hours, then we have to do it.
Breaking it up in this way will still allow, first of all, it'll assure that at any time at least two groups will have access to it. It will prevent the groups that just take over the whole thing. And it will still allow enough room for the sort of informal practices that we have from soccer teams and so forth. But the real goal is to make this primarily accessible for residents, and right now it's a problem, and we're getting complaints and we have problems.
But I guess even if the boulders are there to divide it north-south, if you're going to have two groups, they're still taking over the park. So
first of all, you have two the groups that are the problem. They'll have to go away because they can't.
I see what you're saying, because you're limiting the space.
A soccer group would have plenty of room. By the way, let's say a soccer or a kids group would have plenty of room to hold practices, 2 at a time at least, if not more. We would still leave. There'll still be plenty of room for the ball field use for kids, not for adults, but for kids, which is its intended use. And but it will discourage the groups that just take over and dominate the whole field. And unless we're going to go to programming it, which nobody wants, this is the only solution.
I don't think
So-
programming will solve it either, because they'll program it.
So I don't think we can answer this question tonight, so it looks like we'll have something more to, yeah, I think that would be helpful. Yeah, thanks. Anything else, Mr. Magley?
That was all.
Anything from the attorney,
No, thank you.
town clerk? All right, thank you very much. That brings us to, where do we get to? Public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items.
Honest 44 South Third Avenue. I want to discuss item number 10. Is it now or later?
It would be with 10.
Or no, later. That's its own item.
When item number 10 comes up.
At the time?
Uh-huh.
Okay. My comment about Town 9, I certainly hope that original town residents have 2 cents worth of input. I'm also going to say, if you would have listened to me about Town 9 and bought the Oshner property and made that into a sports complex like I tried to tell you, you wouldn't be having a lot of these problems now.
Okay. Additional public comments?
Jim.
George Upper Superior, Colorado. I have a question here on the back page about these executive sessions to the attorney or the town board. This is pertaining to the parkway. I don't see where that's a personnel matter or a contract. So why are we having executive sessions on the parkway?
So, well, why don't we have the town attorney?
It falls under negotiations and instructing negotiators.
Well, we ain't negotiating nothing about the parkway.
Well, we're having a discussion.
Except spending our money, which ought to be out in the open. If we're hiring somebody to do this fighting, let's get it out in the open. Because when I voted, we voted against the parkway. County voted against the parkway. We didn't vote for the town to have executive sessions on. I'm serious. I don't like these executive sessions. You all know it. Okay. Think about it. Let's open it up. I don't like to read it in the newspaper when I live here. That's the deal right there. We did go around following people around with the camera here. Other thing, what's the comment on the bridge, where we stand on this bridge on 3rd Avenue, Mayor? I asked about that a month and a half ago, and you would turn it over to the town staff evidently. What's the update on this? Can you
So
give me-
Traffic and Safety Committee is going to discuss that, and I'm not sure what their
Who?
TSC, our Traffic and Safety Committee.
Well, I hope it ain't like the last meeting. I come down here to talk, and they talked about one item, and I didn't get to say what I had in my mind that night. It was just one item, and when they're done, they were done. So let's get that opened up to the public a little more on these committees, please.
Okay.
So we'll find out about the bridge from the safety committee then?
Well, my understanding of
You guys
what,
come down and I didn't get to talk.
when we had this discussion last meeting, I believe, is so I think the recommendation, and board, correct me if I'm wrong, is that TSC was going to look at this for the access and
Yeah,
emergency
that's
vehicle
correct.
access and all that. So
Right.
I think hasn't done that yet. We
Yeah.
haven't had a meeting yet. Yeah.
And George, we've had a lot of residents come down for our Transportation and Safety Committee meetings lately, and they've been pretty heavy loaded on many different issues. So I apologize that we haven't got to it yet.
Do we got to start earlier then, or what? More time?
Yeah,
I sit down here for an hour.
Or more often.
I sit
We
down
might need
The other
to,
night.
well, they might be.
we might need to meet more often.
either a different day than Mondays or a
Right.
different time. Yeah.
Well, maybe
We
next
can
time.
put on the agenda next time, or next.
Matt, do we have that scheduled? Do we know when the next meeting is?
No, we don't have anything
Okay.
scheduled
I
right
think
now.
we
Well, we can schedule that.
need to schedule, yeah.
Okay.
Then may I ask a question I asked about naming the room, Orman, where we stand on this? It was 2 months ago. When am I going to get a decision on this? Do I have to go over to the meeting?
Well, George,
Any question over there?
I always encourage you to go to the Historical Commission meetings. Your brother went through the whole 2-hour meeting last week, so you got to keep up the competition there.
How long do you take to make a decision?
They have made a decision, and their decision is that that they have taken it under advisement. They think it's suitable. They want to name something after Miss Orman, but they're not exactly sure what is appropriate. So they're actually working on it.
2 months?
Oh, I think
I
it's
mean, government's slow, but it ain't that slow.
Believe me, it's pretty slow.
George, on this one, I asked patience because I think it's going to take a while because they have, this topic is a little more complex than just Miss Orman's name. So bear with us, come to the meetings, and,
When's their next meeting? I will attend.
well, that last one was just Friday, so.
Yeah, it's
In a
believe it's
month
the
on
third
Friday at 10 a.m.
Third Friday at 10 a.m. of each month.
Okay, and let me bring something else up real quick. How about a light over on our Superior sign over there? This has been dragging and dragging. Does it take that long to contact an electrician to come in and dig a ditch and put electrical line in from the building to the sign?
Well, George, if I can give you an update on that one, too. I think Martin, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're going to do it in conjunction with the installation of the Veterans flagpole because they have to have electrical on that as well, and they want to, economies of scale, they want to do it together.
Guess
If
what?
there's more,
When's this going to be?
This spring.
Springtime. All right.
Thank you. All right.
And then I got to talk on number 10 at the
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Okay, got the bridge, we got that, got the executive sessions that under control, I think. Talk to you later.
Hello, good evening. Heather Craycraft, Executive Director of the Superior Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to give you guys a little notice that we are doing a ribbon cutting for the Sears Home Appliance Showroom on Saturday, February 11th at 12 o'clock, and as many of you that could join us would be fantastic, and I'll send you an email as well, but please join us.
Great. Thank you very much.
Jim Payne, Clayton Circle. I'm a member of the HOA board. I just wanted to use the occasion to remind the board and audience that there is a full meeting. It's not the annual meeting. It's specifically for a runoff election, which is this Thursday, 7 o'clock at El Dorado K8. So all Rock Creek HOA members are encouraged to attend for final proxy.
Did you say the time?
7 p.m. It's not our, we usually start at 6, but because of conflicts with the school, it's 7 o'clock, Thursday the 26th, El Dorado K-8.
Great, thanks. Additional public comment? Seeing none, that brings us to item number 6, presentations. We don't have any this evening. That brings us to item number 7, consent agenda. And on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the January 9th, 2011 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee meeting, adoption of a resolution of making appointments to the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Quality Water Biosystems, Inc. for annual pond maintenance, adoption of a resolution agreement with Swingle Lawn, Tree, and Landscape Care for annual tree care program, approval of a purchase of a Bobcat skid steer, adoption of a resolution approving the Fifth Amendment to the Fourth Interim Agreement between the Municipal Subdistrict, Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District, for participation in the Windy Gap Firming Project for the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda by Trustee Gregorius, second by Trustee Williams. Discussion. So my only discussion is, can someone tell me how the floor, I don't need this tonight, but the ponds have names? I've never understood how they've been named, so if someone could just send me a little note, I'm interested from a historic perspective. So that we have a motion and a second. And Phyllis?
Sterling?
Yes.
Gregorius?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Great, thanks. That carries. That brings us to what was 7H, approval of committee work plans. And Trustee Williams, I forgot who requested that.
I did. I have a number of questions on some of the work plans. First, I'm wanted to talk about some of the budgets. There's a historical commission budget. There is a RCAC budget, and when I look at the budgets, I'm under the impression that there are specific budgets specifically for those committees and that they have control over those budgets. And so I wanted to get further clarification on those budgets.
The committees themselves do not have budgets, and that so the town has budgets for programs and projects and services, and some of those budgets the committees have specific input or comment on.
Okay, and then also I wanted to, I know you can't get that today, we talked about it earlier, but as far as even with the Historical Commission as well as the RCAC budget, the two that have been submitted with this, is there a way to get a list of these budget items when they were initially brought forth to the town board, and as well as the ones that weren't brought to the town board, and when they were initially instituted into the board as far as budget, what have you. So if you could give me that kind of information.
We will see if we can develop a timeline of when programs or items were included in the budget.
And I don't mean if they were included every single year. I mean their initial inclusion.
Yeah.
And then also which ones were actually had to come forward to the board and pass through a vote, and is there a resolution on those? So if I can see those two things, that would help me.
We'll see what we can put together for you, yeah.
Trustee Pennington?
Yeah, I have some concerns here, too, because as we are reworking the Advisory Committee rules, we have adopted preliminary language that the work plan and the budget submitted becomes the approved plan for the advisory committee for the year. So I just wanted to reiterate that to my colleagues, that if it appears on that budget item, it's deemed approved, and the committee can proceed with it. My understanding is they can proceed with it without
Well-
any further approval.
Well, staff will proceed with it with input from the committee.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I just, want us to take it as seriously as we discussed at that Chairs Liaisons Committee. The second thing is, if in fact I lack a little bit of understanding, I guess, on why these two committees have budgets attached at all. ProStack doesn't, and OSAC doesn't, and I'm sort of confused why all of these items are not just in the town budget, and they're even attached to these committees.
Well, maybe that was just a misunderstanding on my part. So last year's work plans didn't have this. They're
Yeah.
just included in the budget.
Yeah, I'm not speaking,
And what I thought I heard Thursday at the joint chair committee meeting was that you would like to see those budgets attached to the work plan.
I'm actually,
Yeah, and
So I did that.
I think the miscommunication is probably not on your part, but I think the miscommunication is probably on the misconception that there are actual budgets for any of the committees.
And the way I look at it is there's budgets for these programs and services and projects, and committees have specific items on certain programs or projects that they specifically comment on or give input on. So
I think the reason why you brought forth budgets relating to these advisory committees is because we were under the impression that these particular two had actual budgets that
They
were
control.
specifically under their control. And so
Yeah.
that lies in the miscommunication.
yeah, none of the committees have authority to spend any money. That's controlled by the board and adoption of the budget, and then staff implements. And then we get input from the committees on those different services, programs, or projects.
Trustee Skumatz?
And since RCAP was brought up, I'll give you an example of the level of involvement. So there's a shred day, has waste day, and something, whatever it is, hard to recycle day. Our input is, what are good dates? How should it interact with the spring cleanup? Should it come before or after the spring cleanup? That sort of thing. So.
And
The fact that it's not part of the town's budget is a bizarre anomaly in many ways.
well, it's part of our budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is.
So, Trustee
Yeah, that was
Hanson?
the one question I had. There's, on the RCAC plan, there's all kinds of good stuff on here, and I'm just wondering, I like what some of the other committees have done, where they put it in quarters, so we know when these programs are going to be implemented. So I'm wondering if it's possible that we could have that too for this, because there's some great stuff here, but when
Yeah, we can add that information, because there's specific times for hard to recycle
Right.
and shredded day and stuff like that, so we can add that
Yeah, yeah.
information.
Okay.
just a point of clarification. So I'm just using RCAC as an example because Historical Commission's entire budget on this is $2,000,
Right.
whereas RCAC's is $119,000 allocated to RCAC projects. The spring cleanup, for example, is $30,000, so it's somewhat of a substantial program.
And that one, I'm sorry.
Where are we?
That one, the board has to approve that contract.
Do we approve it in the budget meetings and when
No,
we approve the
no.
budget, or do we do it every year
We
individually?
do it every year. Western
And it's one of those things that was
Disposal.
bid out also.
Yeah, we bid it out and then bring it forward. Usually it's Western Disposal, but
Lately.
Okay,
Let's see
so
what-
therein lies where I'd like to know when that was first initiated and And when did it come through the board?
Spring cleanup is probably, what, 15 years old?
Yeah, I mean, we
know.
have projects dating back to the 2002 budget, so we'll have to pull that information together
Okay.
for you.
But yeah, I'm looking
Just
for
try to
that.
wipe one of those babies
Yeah.
out. Yeah. Older try to wipe.
Trustee Pennington?
So for clarification's sake, I'm the Historical Commission liaison, and there are two projects that they're involved with. One is the Veterans Memorial, and I don't see anything in that budget for that. So tell me how these allocations work for a project like that, in which I think the project emanated from them, right?
Yeah,
But-
there's going to be a public participation piece of that one.
Okay.
It'll go to, I would imagine, the Historic Commission and probably ProStack, I would imagine, and then Planning Commission as well. So there's already a approval process that's going to be for that project, so I think,
Okay. Okay, and then the second project is the National Day of Service. I don't know have we, as a board, discussed whether or not we want to make that an annual event? And then the budgeting for that doesn't certainly have to be Historical Commission oriented. It can
right.
be Parks and Rec oriented or whatnot, but how are we?
And I thought in our discussions last year on it that it was proposed to be an annual event. So that was our assumption on staff, at least. But maybe I'm not remembering that discussion correctly.
Do we need an official vote on that, or head nod, or what's the?
Well, we have to.
What I'd say along those lines is that if we end up approving, I mean, if people are generally happy with the work plans tonight, we could have an amendment to the work plan and make sure that it's added on to that. That's what I'd recommend.
Yep. It's a good process.
Okay.
Also, there is one other Historical Commission possible funding that should go in their budget, is this historic fire truck. And they're exploring funding and grant opportunities for that. So we should probably see that in their budget.
Didn't we have that in our Finance Committee discussion, and we put it off
Yeah,
a year?
there is nothing in that budget.
Yeah.
So we can list it as zero.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion there was if we can get grants or fundraisers for it, we'll do it. If not, then we'll, postpone it. So.
I think your point's well made. It
Yeah.
maybe should be there with zero on it, so that, anyway, just consider that.
Okay.
Okay. Public comment regarding this particular issue? Any more board comments or suggestions, or otherwise I'll entertain a motion?
Well, and actually, I kind of wanted to go through each work plan. There were a number of just small questions I had
Okay.
on each one.
Sure. Whatever you would like.
I was looking at the Historical Commission under second quarter, number 6, clarify the process for accepting monetary donations and reevaluate the existing process for accepting donated items, excuse me. So I'm wondering, what they're trying to get at here. Are they looking to create a historical society? Are they obviously going to be talking about donation limits? I think that this could be quite elaborate as far as an item here on their agenda, and I'm just wondering how to elaborate more on this so it's a little clearer, their direction.
Trustee Pennington?
Yeah, I can address that. And again, Martin, feel free to correct or add. Clarify the process for accepting monetary donations. I think actually is starting out fairly small. They sell cookbooks. I think, Gladys, you presented them a bunch of historical Superior cookbooks For $10, they do a historical Lost Superior book for $10, and they actually do get money in from their live open days once a month. I do believe in that discussion. They'll possibly expand it to, and I actually encourage this, is bequests and bequests from, when you make a memorial to a person who's died, et cetera, should they, like the Louisville Historical Museum, actually be soliciting those or making it public that they would encourage those. I'm putting words in their mouth with that one. But so that's, I think, where that is at least intended on the first part, maybe intended on the second part. And then reevaluate the existing process for accepting donated items, I believe, is simply donated historical artifacts. Residents have boxes in their garage, et cetera, and they're bringing out old coal lamps and whatnot. So I think that's what that is intended to be.
Okay, and then the next one I wanted to comment on is ProStack's work plan under the first quarter, number 7, evaluate annually top-tier amenities. And I'm wondering how you plan to do this. Is there a town survey you're looking to do for recommending future amenity projects? Priorities, how are you going to create those priorities?
That was added to, we're going to put together a subcommittee of ProStack that will evaluate mostly the playground equipment throughout the town for its use and its condition and all that, and then possibly put together a plan of adding new playground equipment, age appropriate.
I'm talking about number 7. Evaluate top-tier amenities and entire amenities list for recommending future amenity projects, both individually and as priorities to be included in future parks development. And I'm thinking, and I could be completely way off base, that you need a town survey in order to figure out what are top-tier amenities for the town.
May I? Jim
Sure.
Payne, Chair of ProStack. That's something you may recall we've done every year. I mean, we have a list, actually. If you were to ask what's our list, we have one. The last time that was, actually, it was reviewed since then, but you may recall we did that in advance of what became 3 parks, where we identified those amenities before there was even any concept of a park. So we update that every year, just sort of the way OSAC goes through its priorities for open space. And we have, it may end up being a survey at some point, but we have quarterly outreach meetings around the town, and we're using those to get input on ideas. But largely, it's a research and updating of that list. And we have new members, so we want to get their input so that they're on board with our current priorities.
So you're working off of a town survey from the past, right?
Well, we do have town surveys from the past.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yes, that's one of our pieces of input.
I just was wondering how you were going to execute that, what you were going to do about that.
But a lot of it's the quarterly regional meetings like we had at El Dorado in October, where we go around to each part of town and invite people and get their input.
Okay, yeah, the reason why I brought it up is if you were looking to do a new town survey, that would be something I would want to know. If that was...
Absolutely. We don't anticipate a formal survey. If the group decides that we're stuck and we need that kind of input, we may do it. But I think these regional community meetings are really what we're relying on to get input.
Thank you. Go ahead, I will.
Just further questions regarding the Historical Commission and the acceptance of monetary gifts. And it just eludes me right now of how we handle gifts now. And is there something set up for that? Is there a special account? That needs to all be addressed.
They do, actually, to address that, they do have a separate account, and I think that is their bank account that is reported on every month. And I think it's slightly under $2,000 right now, and they...
But is it a town account, or?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, it's not a town account. Who has control over that, Martin?
Mark with the town staff, just a quick point of clarification. The Superior Historical Commission has its own bank account set up through U.S. Bank, and that's what gets reported monthly for any donations that are accepted on behalf of the commission for their use. And anything that would come to the town would be...
I think we need some clarification on that. This is a town's commission, so we got to look at that. Maybe get some advice on that.
Yeah, it's something that goes back to when it was originally convened.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
Yep.
we've got to do this more.
All right, it's good it's on the agenda here to look at. I think that needs some addressing, I think.
I would, I'm sure they're happy to do that,
Yeah.
Joe. I will give you the liaison assurance that that is audited every month.
I don't have
Right.
that. I
And
don't
so
have
just for that
This-
confidence.
This just isn't a private organization, it's the town's
Right.
historical commission. So
Right.
that's a different animal.
And actually, as I think if, in fact, they go to something that, more like the Louisville, isn't it called Louisville Historical Society?
We usually form a separate
Right,
organization.
right. If, in fact, it evolves, et cetera, we will have to look at structure.
Thanks. Thank you, Mike.
One other thing under the ProStack work plan, on ongoing, work cooperatively with OSAC to pursue an eventual southern Boulder County trail alignment from Colton Trailhead to the southern border, capable of connecting with an eventual Rocky Flats trail system. My question on that is, OSAC does not have that in their work plan, and I'm wondering why there isn't an integration here with OSAC and ProStack.
Isn't there something in the OSAC plan, though, about connecting to the Rocky Flats Trail?
I think it's on somebody's wish list.
Well, no, it's third
it's
quarter,
Saturday.
number 1, begin discussions regarding potential Rocky Flats
that's true.
Trail
Okay.
links. Could that be it?
Yep, I think you're right. Sorry, my mistake.
Are you finished, Deb?
Go ahead.
I wanted to make sure we didn't forget about this suggestion from the Ridge that they made numerous times when they were here for traffic and safety meetings. They have recommended that trail connection from the gate along McCaslin, direct to Meadowlark Trail. And I don't know if it's appropriate. I don't know how we do, where we go with that. I just don't want to make sure it's lost.
It'll start with Martin and his making contact with Boulder County.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it would be, would it, I don't know, would it ever appear on a work plan?
No, I mean, I think that's something that if it looks like Boulder County is interested in considering, then we would take it back to the committees, and then eventually it has to come to the board, because I'm sure Boulder County won't want to pay for it. So
Okay.
if we
That's-
needed to, we could amend the work plans, but
That's good.
Trustee Williams?
All right, so I'm moving on here to the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee work plan. First of all, Garden in a Box program. I believe that would be a new program that we haven't started yet.
No, we didn't last year.
We did do it, yes. Okay. And what does that program entail?
It entails advertising that Resource 2000 offers a Garden in the Box program and encouraging residents to consider buying them.
So it's just basically a link to what that program offers.
Yes.
The other thing is, let's see here, the commercial green building codes adopted by town board. Does this mean that you are evaluating them before the town board adopts them or after?
We did evaluate them before, and we provided our recommendations.
Okay, so then this has already been completed.
No, it hasn't been adopted yet.
Okay, so
we might end up helping with the education or something, of the work session. We might have some members there to help explain elements or something like that, but
okay,
it's 2012. So.
It just was vague, and I was wondering what all you were thinking about implementing or doing.
It's simply reviewing the proposed codes and providing a recommendation to the board.
Just for clarity's sake, I agree that that's maybe not what is conveyed by this quick little statement here under number 2, energy, so maybe we could just rework that to make it clear. What I'm reading is commercial green building codes adopted by town board, so I guess that doesn't tell me the same thing you just told me. Am I on the same item?
So review commercial
Yes.
building codes that
After
for
adoption,
presentation to build
for
town board?
presentation to
No, it
town
would,
board?
I think
Or-
we,
Okay.
In other words, what is
Yeah.
the action? Other than the board's already approved it, I'm just wanting to know what the action is for the recycling committee.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Can I just make one comment that's totally unrelated to this? We have seats in the front row. You might be standing there for a while, so help yourself.
And then I have one more. Under number 4, conservation, provide compost at yard waste facility and look at a possible event or delivery options. Delivery options of compost, evaluate disposal campaign. So is this a new program, or did we do this last year as well?
Provide compost at yard waste facility happened before. The look at possible event or delivery, well, and at possible events. Those were all in the past. Evaluating whether there was a way to organize a delivery of compost to residents. That's the
Something you're looking into.
low-cost possible thing to consider. Looking at whether or not we can say, hey, here's a sign-up sheet. If you'd like to have compost delivered, we'll provide your name, and maybe that'll get price breaks from Western or whoever else would deliver it.
Okay.
At least in that we don't actually pay for the delivery, we simply provide the,
That was the plan.
okay.
One more thing. It says update website on environment programs and education. I'm assuming that's a town website?
It is.
Great, thanks.
Anything else from the board? Public comment regarding this issue? I know everybody came down to talk about the committees. Okay, maybe not. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to table this advisory work plans for the next meeting with changes.
I guess that would be an option. We could also do it with changes as noted.
Yeah.
That might be a better one.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
If it's the motion where it's with changes as noted.
That's not the motion.
That's not that motion. Second? Seeing none, I'll entertain another motion. Trustee Skumatz.
To accept the motion with changes as noted.
I'll second that.
Second, motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Gagouris. All in favor?
Discussion real quick?
Yep.
I'm sorry. Just
Sure.
back to the architect plan, I'd like to see it broken out, just if that's part of the changes, I'd like to see it broken out in quarterly so that we can
Oh,
anticipate
right.
that.
That was a change we
Yeah,
saw.
good, perfect.
So all in favor, Hanson, Sorelli, Schoolmatz, Muckle, Gregoris, and Pennington. Opposed is Williams. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to item number 8, discussion of adoption of resolutions appointing members to the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee meeting and Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee. Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. We have, let me just pull that up, sorry, make my note. There are currently 3 vacancies on the ProStack, Park Recreation, Trails Advisory Committee, and 3 vacancies on the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee. The board conducted interviews on January 9th. We have a total of 4 applicants for ProStack and 2 for RCAC. I sent around an email that I had received from Darryl McCool as far as preference for one of the 2 committees with consideration of this ordinance that we are considering, and one person sitting on multiple committees. So you had received her if forced to choose, she would prefer to stay on ProStack, so you have that information. The 4 candidates for ProStack are Brent Bickle, Peter Bottomley, Sandy Hammerly, and Tina Thomas. The 2 for RCAC are Tina Thomas and Darryl McCool. We have 1 permanent vacancy on RCAC and 2 alternates, so that's something else for the board to consider. We included resolutions with blanks for appointments because I didn't receive clear direction as far as who the board was thinking about appointing to those committees. So those have been included in your packet. And we also have, the town clerk, Phyllis, has ballots that we prepared if the board would like to use those. They're available, and we leave it up to board discussion and recommendation for appointments.
Okay, board discussion regarding this issue. Trustee Williams.
So on RCAC, I'm wondering, are we going to fill the regular vacancy first before the alternate?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Okay. I'd recommend that, Phyllis, you send down the ballots unless somebody wants to do this.
Just a point of clarification, though,
Trustee Hanson.
on the ordinance. I realize it hasn't been passed yet, but I believe that for the most part, the board supports having each person only sit on 1 committee at a time. So I'd like to make that clear before we pass around any ballots that Darryl has chosen to sit on just ProStack and not RCAC.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's a fair statement.
So we're going to just consider Tina Thomas for RCAC.
Correct.
Okay.
So then we're choosing 4 for the 3 positions.
Well, there'll be,
I think
well,
we'll-
you have 3 vacancies
Three on
on
ProStack.
ProStack.
Yeah, I was talking about
Yeah.
ProStack,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think there's just 3 now.
Well, no, Darryl is 4.
That's RCAC.
No, you're
Darryl has chosen
No, no, Tina's an
ProStack.
architect, no.
Well, she's
So we're not,
Okay.
Phil, not Phil.
Why don't you pass down the other one, the next one? Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to assume that, that Tina Thomas will be on RCAC. Does that sound fair? I mean, we can certainly vote on 1 person and pass the ballot back to Phyllis, but it seems like not too helpful.
Yes.
Okay? So we will pass that motion with her name on it, okay? So we are working off the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee Vote for 3, given the understanding that Tina Thomas is on RCAC. So now vote for 3.
A lot of suspense involved.
Yes. Okay. So you can tally them up if you like, or you can put the names on there.
Something tells me this will be a unanimous vote.
I suspect. Trustee Skumatz.
I really think that we we should just be completely transparent. So I voted for the 3 people that were not Tina for the one committee.
I think everybody else did too.
Okay.
I just want it known.
So let's work off the resolution then. I'll entertain a motion. First one is for the RCAC. With the name being Tina Thomas.
And RCAG looks forward to having her serve.
Okay. So,
We were very excited.
motion, anybody? Trustee Gagurus?
I'd like to make a motion, Town of Superior Resolution Number R-5, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior appointing, wow, Tina Thomas.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
That added to the suspense. That was great.
Waking somebody up.
That's a call to vote. That's your
All
signal.
right. Tina Thomas to the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee.
Motion by Trustee Gagurus, second by Trustee Skumas. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Next, Trustee Skumas.
That was transparent.
Town of Superior, I'd like to move Town of Superior Resolution Number R-6, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior making appointments to the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee, ProStac, with the names as follows. Please read.
Brent Brickle, Peter Bottomley, and Sandy Hammond.
Motion by Trustee Skumas. Is there a second? Trustee Gagurus. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 9, public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving a reduction in sewer service charges for original Superior Metropolitan for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Phyllis, you have proof of publication?
Oh, I do.
Okay, I'll take that as your word. Thank you. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. For a number of years, it's been the board's policy to have sewer rates for original town residents to be the same as what is charged in the city of Louisville. And this dates back to when the city of Louisville provided those services to those residents. So currently, Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 subsidizes those rates until some point in the future that the Louisville rates exceed our own town rates. So currently, sewer collection services for original town residents match what is in the city of Louisville's rate at $15.81 a month. This was based on the budget we adopted in November and on information we'd received from the city of Louisville that they were going to increase their rates by 5%. So that is what we adopted. However, we were later informed by the city of Louisville that they actually only increased their rates by 4%. So we need to adjust our rates back down to 4% to match the city of Louisville's rates for original town residents. This affects 102 customers in original town and would drop their rates from $15.81 to $15.06. Or, I'm sorry, to $15.66, sorry. But, so the resolution that's included with your packet would change the increase for original town sewer rates from 5% to 4%.
Okay, thank you. Board discussion. Trustee Williams?
I'm just curious, was there a miscommunication with Louisville?
Yeah. Well, what
did they say 5% and meant 4%?
We spoke to their finance director, and he told us that they we're going to adopt a 5% budget increase. And the board council, when it came time to adopt their budget, which was, they went through a number of changes, and this is one they kind of made on the fly, the council did. And in my discussions with the city manager of Louisville, he had let me know that they made that change. So we had already adopted our budget, so by then, so bringing it back to the board.
Good enough, thank you.
Okay. Further board discussion? Public comment regarding this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and I'll entertain any motion. Trustee Hansen?
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number SMD 1-3, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, setting new service rates, and amending the district's rules and regulations by adoption of a new Appendix A to the rules and regulations.
Motion by Director Hanson, second by Director Williams. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 10, discussion and adoption of a resolution approving a developer agreement with IRBV Land Company. Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. For the board's consideration is a development agreement that would facilitate the construction of a permanent ice facility that's currently located over by Superior Plaza. It's been a long been a goal of the town to facilitate a permanent facility in town for the Boulder Valley Hockey Foundation. They've been a member of the community for 9 years now. I think 2003 was when the temporary facility was first constructed. And back in February 8th of 2010, the board approved the purchase of 10 acres with George Menkick for to finally solidify a permanent site for this facility. Since then, we've been working with representatives of the hockey group and Luke Taylor, who's their development partner for this project, on a development agreement and financial incentives that would help facilitate the construction of this permanent facility. What's proposed is a construction of a 143,000 square foot permanent facility, 2 sheets of ice on the 10 acres that the current temporary facility sits. This includes indoor turf fields, as well as a community room, and 1,800 seats is the preliminary plans for the development, as well as some construction of public improvements, extension of Marshall Road, drainage improvements, parking, other private roads and landscaping that would be done as part of the development. At one time, it was discussed about moving this within the town center development, south of the creek. The two developments seem to be on a different timeline as far as construction and approval. So right now, we're moving forward on the current site. If things were to move swiftly on the town center site, you know, who knows? But right now, we are moving forward as if it would be constructed on the 10 acres that the town bought last year. Significant elements of the agreement include, as I mentioned, the amenities, the 2 sheets of ice, the indoor fields. The developer has 30 days from proof of financing to the town that the town would convey the property to the developer. So they have until November 1st to provide us proof that they can finance the project. Once we receive that proof, we have 30 days to convey the 10 acres to the developer. There's a reverter clause in the agreement. If the developer doesn't end up constructing the facility, the land will revert back to the town as a protection for the town and its investment for the land. As I mentioned, the company will agree to construct a 2-sheet ice permanent facility with indoor turf. The estimated construction value is $18 million. The town will provide up to $2 million in property tax increment financing. This is new revenue. No existing revenue would be used to facilitate the project. So what that means is once the project gets built, there's an increment from the increased value from the project. That money would flow from the town to the developer, that new revenue that would come in from that property tax, up to a $2 million maximum. To ensure that in any future possible bankruptcy and to protect our initial investment in the land value, the agreement includes the town keeping 25% of this property tax increment for the first 7 years in an escrow account. So what that does for us is if the facilities bought or built and 6 years from now goes into bankruptcy, we would retain any monies that is in that escrow account to protect against our initial investment in the 10 acres. If the company is still in operation after the 8th year, we would start to pay out of that escrow account 1/7 of what the balance is. Over the next 6 years, that would continue, as long as they're operating the facility as an ice rink and recreation center, up to the $2 million max. Once the $2 million max is reached, any additional TIF revenue would flow to the town. The agreement calls for the company to submit a site development plan for a permanent facility and rezoning, the construction of private roads, utilities, landscaping, drainage, Marshall Road extensions that are identified in the site development plan. The agreement includes the town has a first right of refusal for the temporary facility. That might be something the board wants to discuss, but the way the agreement is set up is once the company moves into the new facility, they provide us notice, and then we have 30 days to let them know if we want it, and if we want it, we have 60 days to remove it. So it's a tight time frame, but and if the board feels like now that you don't want it, we should just strike that from the agreement. But there's provision for us to take it if we'd like. It includes 100 hours of free ice time and field time for our programming use for town programs and residents.
In perpetuity?
Mm-hmm. I mentioned the reverter for the land. So the company has 6 months from the date the property is conveyed. So if they, on November 1st, meet their deadline, show us proof that they have financing, they have 6 months from that time to begin their construction, and then they have up to 18 months to complete their construction. So I think those are dates and timelines that we can all meet. If they fail to meet their November 1st deadline to provide proof that they have financing, the agreement is terminated immediately. The town must must approve application for rezoning and the permanent facility, and the agreement cannot be assigned without approval of the town, so they can't assign it to another entity without the town's approval.
Matt, would you repeat that last one? Without town's approval?
Yeah, if they wanted to assign this agreement to another entity, or either they're looking to sell the facility, they need to come back for the town's approval. Let's see, I think those are the highlights of the agreement. Luke Taylor is here representing. So we
Right.
worked long and hard on this. So.
Thanks. So before if it's okay with the board, I'd like to have a representative of the organization come and give, whatever they'd like to present, and then go from there, if that sounds fair.
Organization, or do you want a Superior resident?
From the organization,
Yeah,
actually.
representative,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. And name and address, if you wouldn't mind terribly.
Luke Taylor. Is this on right here?
Yeah, no, that's something else.
Luke Taylor with the Ice Ranch. First of all, I want to thank Matt and Kendra and the trustees and the mayor for this opportunity. We've been working pretty hard on this over the last this will be 8 months or so, and this idea was a lot longer coming. I think Boulder Hockey Club first started talking about this back in 2003 when they built their original facility. So we've gotten to the point now where we're hoping that you guys will approve this development agreement tonight. This is what is really necessary for us to be able to take the next step, which is, start submitting the development plans, getting the financing put in place, and get construction. Our current schedule as of right now is we hope to have building permits and everything submitted by late spring, early summer, and then start taking this summer so that we can have the first sheet and the core open February of 2013. At that time, we'll take down the remaining temporary facility over there, and then we'll build the second sheet, add the turf facility in there, with an anticipated opening date of 2013, August 2013, so that make the winter season. We've got 6 major customers that will be in this facility. Boulder Hockey Club is the flagship tenant. We have a group called Rocky Mountain Rough Riders. We also have an adult league, adult hockey league, as well as two youth soccer leagues that will be here. And then some smaller groups like Denver Curling Club and some miscellaneous groups in there. So the facility is full right now. I wish there was a little more land there. We could probably add another sheet or 2 in there and still fill it up. But the demand is there, and we're looking forward to bringing 600,000 to 800,000 people to the town of Superior every year that would like to spend some money here. So thank you for your time, and I hope you guys approve this.
Great, thanks. Now, is there anybody, an official spokesman or an unofficial spokesman for the hockey club who would like to present anything?
South Pitkin Avenue, Superior, Colorado. Remember this time. Again,
Can you
John
state your
Sales.
name?
Oh, John Sales.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Forgot that.
Next time you get both of them together.
Yes. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I have no prepared remarks. I'm a board member and a resident of Superior. We are thrilled and ecstatic about your support for this particular project. As you can see, this room is filled with parents and kids out there in the lobby, and a lot of these moms and dads are residents of Superior and the surrounding area. And we have one rink, and we spend a lot of time at the CU rink facility, and we all get parking tickets when we go there. And we would love to have 2 rinks here because we know we can fill it up. And we have a wonderful coaching staff, a great board, and we've had just great life lessons learned in that temporary structure. And we love that place. And if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to have the place we have today. But we're looking forward to building something, thanks to Luke, that's going to be even more exciting, and we're really proud of that. So we have a lot of different things going on in that rink. It's not just hockey. We have men's leagues. We have the potential for figure skating. We've talked a little bit about all these different things that we could do if we have 2 rinks. The community room could be very exciting for all of the different people, all the different families and kids that live in Superior. We're going to have a little bouncy gym in there for birthday parties, and Skate for Santa will continue forever and ever, and we're really excited. One of the other things that I think is really important is we all participate in a lot of hockey tournaments throughout the state. We can't hold a hockey tournament here because you can't with just 1 rink. But with 2 rinks, you can, and that'll be really exciting. We'll be able to bring a lot of revenue to this great town. We're really excited. So, again, I had no really planned remarks. Luke and everybody here, if you want to come up after me and speak to what this means to you, that would be great. But that might take forever.
Mm-hmm.
But we really appreciate your support and look forward to you guys committing to this project. It's going to be a great thing for our town.
Great, thanks. So before, there will be board, obviously, questions here. And yes, I don't want to cut off anybody who feels like they need to speak to this particular issue, but I thought maybe the easiest way to do this is do a little show of hands first. So anybody here who's interested in this particular project, if they wouldn't mind just raising their hands as an informal poll. Okay. Yes, I assume that was all a favorable impression. There's a yeah. Yes, great, thanks. All right, with that, I'll entertain any board questions. Trustees Kamatz and then Trustee Sorelli.
Thanks for the tough, I'm sure the negotiation was difficult, and I was really, I really needed to see that reverter clause in there, and I really appreciate that. I had a couple questions about the agreement, and one of them, I'm sure maybe some of the other board members have these same questions, and my concern is that this is a precedent-setting thing, and this is I want to make sure all these clauses make sense for if another group comes forward and wants similar kinds of things that we're comfortable. And I is this a foundation implies to me it's nonprofit, but is it in fact a nonprofit organization is one question I had.
No, they're for-profit.
Okay.
This facility would be.
Okay?
So just for clarification, I think I understand this, and correct me if I'm wrong. So there's the Hockey Foundation, which I believe is a not-for-profit organization that operates youth hockey inside the for-profit
Correct.
building. Is that
Yep.
sound accurate?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then one of the questions I had was that you have in here explicit use of ice time and field time, but you did not, and one of the things that we really harped on was that we really wanted to have access to the community space room, and it seems to me that maybe something in there, in that same sort of clause, might have been an appropriate addition.
So let's see.
That
There is,
Thought I saw
I'm
it.
just looking for it.
4C.
So, yeah, 4C, it mentions that, that the town and its invitees can use the room at no charge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one of the other questions I had related to, so this $2 million and of TIF and all that, so does that imply that it's, that the value of the building, of the facility, et cetera, the improvements would garner the town about $300K a year? Is that what that
That's our
implies?
conservative estimate,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks. And then I guess I'll get called on again later. But one of the things that the other questions I had was on the last thing where you talk about the agreement can't be assigned to another. Does that mean that if they want to sell to somebody and we don't agree with that sale, what happens to the facility? I
Well,
mean, there's facility
there-
on land that maybe we don't own,
There's
but
language
kind
in
of.
there that says can't be unreasonably withheld, so, maybe Kendra, do you want to?
We won't own the land anymore.
Yeah, we,
Once it's built, we'll have no claim to the land whatsoever?
Exactly.
Our only
That's
our
why-
only thing is that we can hold up possible sale or something. Other than that, we have no claim, no nothing.
Well, we're retaining some portion of the TIF to cover our, our expenditure and giving them the property to begin with. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
But that's a certain amount per year, though.
Yes.
Right?
25%.
25% per year. Until we get to the point where it covers it's an agreed upon value of the land. We've agreed upon $1 million as the value of the property.
And what did we pay for that land?
$1 million,
Okay.
yeah.
Kendra, how does that operate? Do we actually get paid back the million?
Through the withholding. So right now, it's what's called a TIF rebate
Right.
we're giving them, or a TIF refund. We would have given them, let's say, 100% of that TIF refund, but what we're doing is withholding the first 25% each year until we meet that $1 million mark.
Correct.
and the way so the property tax increment flows to the town first. And then, so the 75% would be paid out quarterly each year. So, yeah, we would just retain that 25%.
But Matt,
Just, we'll ask along these lines, but I just want to make sure that you were
I think
done
that's
with
my
that
share
particular-
for now.
Yes, okay. Trustee Henson and Trustee Pennington.
can you expand on that a little bit more? You say the town retains 25% per year, but the town, we don't have access to that. It's put in an escrow account. We
Right.
can't-
Correct.
Right.
So will the town ever receive that into our bank account?
Only if the property were to go in bankruptcy
Right.
Okay.
and it ceases to exist as a ICE facility.
And
Okay. So the way the town makes its money back from this investment in this is through sales tax revenue.
Well, and once the TIF reaches a $2 million maximum, then anything after that flows to the town.
And have we projected what that would be, or do we know what that would be?
We have, our conservative estimates are, the increment's going to generate about $250,000 a year. So, do you have a total, Paul? Do you want to? 8 years. No. So, I mean, and then there's a 25-year limit on the TIF.
Right.
so.
Okay, so over time, through the TIF, we will get money back to the town to pay for that land, providing it stays in business,
If it does well enough, yes, that there is additional TIF coming in, yes.
in addition to sales tax revenue. Okay.
Do we know the projected annual sales tax revenue?
No, we didn't do that.
No potential of what that would be?
It's,
What is it now?
it's,
Essentially zero.
That's what I thought. Okay.
yeah, so I
13
mean,
grand.
it's,
That's just off the top of my head, thinking what's there right now. I can't imagine there's a lot of sales tax generation.
Usually these types of facilities don't generate high sales taxes, because it's mostly a service.
So just along these lines, I just want to make sure for organization, Trustee Pennington, if it's related to this particular issue.
Yeah, it is. It's all along the lines of Chris. I'm having difficulty seeing the payback to the town. I want it to be totally realistic about the $1 million we put out and whether or not that $1 million is ever really reasonably going to be repaid to the town.
I believe so, yes. I
And,
mean,
okay, so-
our calculations are using a $9 million valuation. And, you know, they're talking about an $18 million facility. So we've basically taken that figure and cut it in half just to be conservative, what type of revenue we think the project will bring in, so.
Okay, could you flesh it out with some numbers?
Huh?
Or I'd like, tell me how I'm not seeing how the numbers are working.
Paul, why don't you come up and give your analysis?
Good evening, Paul Mills, town staff. As the manager had identified, assuming the facility is valued at $9 million, the incremental valuation, that would generate roughly $300,000 a year in incremental property tax revenue. Over the 25 years of tax increment financing, that would generate roughly $7.4 million. Additionally, as it relates to, I believe, both Trustee Pennington and Trustee Hansen inquiry on annual sales tax revenues, I did do an inquiry with the City of Littleton Finance Director with a similar facility that Mr. Taylor runs in Littleton, the ice ranch at Littleton. And their estimate for annual sales tax revenues just for the facility is in the range of $40,000 to $50,000. Then you get the tangential or the spinoff of additional sales tax revenue generated with the adjacencies of the businesses. So there's a brief overview.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Gregorius, along these lines. Trustee Zerode.
It's kind of stretched if it's along these lines, but I am, overwhelmingly in favor of this collaboration and this endeavor. I think in the hockey world, it'll put Superior on the map. In the hockey tournaments, and the families that will be coming here will spend their money here. And I think it's been, I know it's been difficult negotiations at times, but I want to say thank you to Matt for bringing this to fruition. This has been a long time coming. The fact that you already have it booked in advance, that's how many businesses can actually say that? That's very impressive. And if we had more room, if you could put a third sheet, that would be, that's really a very impressive thing. I'm excited to see this come, and I would obviously be voting for it.
Regarding property tax TIF,
Just real quick.
Trustee
So
Hansen.
on the $300,000 per year, that's not $300,000 to the town, that's, we would get a certain small percentage of that, correct? Or is that the whole amount?
No,
it goes to the urban renewal.
That's the increment that's going to flow first to the developer.
Okay. Okay.
Up to the $2 million max, and then after that flows to the town.
So I have one question regarding
To the urban renewal.
to urban renewal.
Yes.
Yes, right. So just along this particular question, and I know Trustee Sorrell, you've been very patient, but so is the property tax TIF just off of this this boundary of this facility, because the Urban Renewal Authority obviously extends to 180 acres or whatever that is, would revenue that would be generated off that be first called into this agreement, or is it only the property tax TIF off of this specific location?
Right now, this is the only location generating, yes. So what we'd have to do is if there's other revenue-generating developments come in, we would have to be specific about how to segregate that.
Okay. And do you think you needed to do that in advance or whenever something else comes online?
No, I think we could do that when something else comes online.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Cirilli.
My question's related to the further development, the site approval, the approval of the site development plan. Remind me of the process we follow there, who does that, and what timeline does that need, since I think there is a fairly short timeline involved in this agreement from when they start the process.
That's correct. So it's similar to a final development plan, if you want to think of it that way. And it would have staff review initially, then go to the Planning Commission, and then ultimately to the town board. And we're looking at a 90-day window for that.
So, I have a question
Along those lines, Trustee Hansen?
So with the businesses in Superior Plaza, would they be part of that development plan? So
Yeah, we'll send a referral out to them.
So they'll have a say in traffic flow and all that kind of stuff?
We'll take their comments on it, and then the Planning Commission will consider those, and I imagine they'll come, some of them would come to the hearings as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Skumas?
I guess.
Regarding this?
I don't think it's quite this.
Trustee Williams?
What would be the annual total revenue potential, and when would we break even on this development land deal?
Paul, I mean, I think Paul mentioned $7+ million over the 25 years, but I don't know the break even.
So, Trustee Williams, just to ensure I understand your question, break even on the town's initial $1 million.
So at what point would we recoup that $1 million? Is it 3 years, 7, 10?
If we're assuming roughly $300,000 a year, over a 10-year period, that's $3 million, $2 million of that would revert to the ICE folks, for lack of a better term, I'm sorry. And then the remaining million, potentially pay off the land, so 10-year period of time.
So at this point, we're saying that the total annual revenue potential is about $300,000 a year.
And again, that is specific to the
Property taxes, I understand that.
Tangential spin-off revenue sources, sales tax revenue generated by the facility itself, and then sales tax revenue is generated by the adjacent businesses. So I would argue, just from a property tax perspective, covering 10 years, if you incorporate those revenue line items, it would be something less than that.
And if it's something that jumpstarts whatever happens within that area, your use tax will make that back, that much faster, so potentially it would be much shorter. Trustee Skumatz?
It's a different topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this is for the attorney, and that is, we've entered into some agreements with, for instance, the development across the way, the marketplace and all. Are there, any agreement that we enter into sort of starts a precedent that maybe others might expect? Is there anything in here that is completely different from something we've done before, or could cause us heartburn in the future if others come forward to us, et cetera? Does that make sense?
Sure. It doesn't establish legal precedent, so I think we'll be fine, and we haven't done a TIF rebate of this type before. Is that correct?
Because the other one's sales tax TIF.
Right.
Yeah, property tax. What we did in the marketplace was a sales
It was a
tax
sales
increment
tax.
financing.
So no, I don't think this will create any issues for us in the future. And Mayor, I just wanted to go back to your question
Yes, please.
earlier. We've already limited it to this
You
property
did. Thank you.
expressly, so we
Perfect.
should be good from both sides.
Thank you, appreciate that. Trustee Pennington?
Along the lines of what Lisa was asking, did we ever consider any other potential arrangement? For example, where we retain ownership of the land and lease the building on a long-term basis? And
to make the financing work for the facility and for the group, they needed to have us convey that land to them. We specifically talked about that, but that was a piece that they needed to make this work.
I saw, Luke, you were going to get up earlier, and I certainly would invite that if you've got some elements to add on this.
But that's where the reverter clause was so important. So.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to shed a little light on the sales tax question that was kind of going around here. The current facility here is primarily programmed with Boulder Hockey Club, which is a nonprofit, which obviously means no sales tax. The new facility has, in addition to Boulder Hockey Club, has other members in there that are for-profit, which means sales tax on it. So when Paul was up here saying that he checked with Littleton on we were paying about $45,000 from Ice Time. He also didn't include, we also have several other businesses in there that we own, but they're under different names. We have a restaurant that pays about $50,000 a year. We have Starbucks in there that pays additional revenues in there. We have a pro shop in there. And the projected revenues for this particular facility compared to our one in Littleton will be about double. So I think that you can expect to have significantly more sales tax revenue than you guys are giving credit for on that particular thing. So about 40% of our 40 to 50% of our mix will be for-profit customers that will pay sales tax. And then the other question that you had was the Superior Development, Superior Liquors over there. Several members of that development are also going to be investors in this particular development, so we will be working together fairly closely on how that whole parcel lines up and maximizes both of our interests.
Great, thanks.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Real quick? You mentioned a pro shop in the other facility. Is there going to be a pro shop in this one?
Correct.
And will that compete with the shop that's in place?
I think it's going to be the same one.
Okay.
Oh.
That's maybe for Friday.
Also, I would like to ask, is there going to be a restaurant and a Starbucks in this one as well?
Yes, there will. It'll be a 3,000 square foot restaurant. We'll have balconies overlooking both ice as well as a balcony overlooking the mountains in there. There'll be a Starbucks in there, a pro shop. We also have some area that we're going to be leasing to some individual businesses. There's a chiropractor that's going to take 2,500 square feet that will be in here as well. So there'll be, yeah, exactly.
How about a dentist?
Yeah, this is our next on the list here. So there will be a bit of ancillary revenue from this project in addition to just base revenue, turf time revenue.
I think that'll be our 10th Starbucks in town.
Yeah, I'm sure. And is Old Chicago, do they understand that there's going to be a restaurant right there and there's going to be some competition?
You know, I don't know if they understand it yet, but
They will.
they will.
I think there'll be more than enough for everybody there.
Hopefully.
Other board questions regarding this? Or any particular
Yeah.
issue? Trustee Pennington?
I actually do. On this reverter clause, if I understood you correct, it only activates in case of bankruptcy, right?
No, that, if they fail to build or construct the
Oh,
facility.
okay, that reverter, yes. But give me the bankruptcy provisions. I thought I heard a 6-year.
So for the first 7 years, we will collect right off the top 25% of the tax increment. We'll hold that in an escrow account. If they're still in operation beginning in the 8th year, we begin to pay out of that escrow account 1/7 of the balance. And then that continues for the next 6 years after that. So until either the escrow account is at 0 or we've reached the $2 million maximum limit.
Did I miss the bankruptcy provisions?
So the bankruptcy, if they fail, if it goes into bankruptcy and it fails to operate as the ICE facility, whatever's in that escrow account, the town will retain.
But at that point, there's no reverter on the land. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. The reverter only takes place if they fail to build the facility.
Right. So to follow up, if bankruptcy occurs, we do have to anticipate both the best and the worst. If bankruptcy occurs, the land is still attached to the building and is sold with the building, et cetera, et cetera. But we have prior approval on the purchaser of the facility. We have some provision in here, as I understood.
Oh, that's for an assignment. If there's bankruptcy, we won't have any control over it. Over who buys because the bankruptcy court will take control over that.
That's why we wanted to include this escrow money to protect that initial investment.
Trustee Hansen? Different topic. So, two different organizations, one's for-profit, one's nonprofit. The nonprofit is the actual hockey club, and the
Correct.
for-profit is the owner of the...
And as well as some other groups that are for-profit as
Okay.
well. Are there any other nonprofits? I don't know where Luke went. Sorry. Oh, are there any other? Are there any other nonprofit groups besides the hockey club?
Yes, some of the soccer tenants, like the Boulder Force, are nonprofit, and group for the soccer club are nonprofit. The adult leagues and so forth from the hockey stand are all for profit.
So our support is going towards the for-profit structure. Any nonprofit can operate in there. So the Boulder Valley Hockey Club is just a Boulder County club. Anybody can join. It's not a Superior club. It's a Boulder County club.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any other hockey club could go in there and recruit players and lease space from
If
this
they have
for-profit.
if they have the ice time available.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Trustee Pennington and Trustee Williams.
So let's get to, I've got the town center envision in my mind, and in my mind, I'm seeing this portal, if you will, as the gateway to the town center. So it does matter to me what the facade of the new facility will look like. Do we have, is that what we have in front of us here?
No. That will be part of the board's consideration of the site development plan.
Right.
That'll come forward.
Okay.
That's why I asked that question.
So, it comes forward, and we say this is not in keeping with the type of facades, et cetera, we see as encouraging development of the rest of the town center. At that point, if we don't approve that site plan, everything terminates.
This agreement terminates, correct?
Okay.
Trustee Williams.
I was curious, currently there, I'm assuming, at least last I remember, there was figure skating, ice skating, not in a league for hockey, but figure skating, whether they have, I don't know what they call it, some program called SAM or something like that. Is that still operating there? And will this be transferred to the new facility?
I think you're referring to the recreational skating, rec skates that occur on the weekends, and there's so many hours that we've already, in 2003, committed to for the residents of this community.
Well, and also there's
Like U.S. figure skating.
yeah,
that
the
type of
U.S. figure
association.
skating.
Learn to
There's
skate, okay, I think that's what we call it. We call it learn to skate, and
it's learn to skate. Okay.
that will continue, of course, absolutely. And but we'll have probably a much more extensive of everything, just because we'll have two rinks. And there's actually a little smaller rink also tied to it too, so we'll be able to do other little skates on that alongside the other two rinks. So everything's expanded.
So then the 100 hours, that only occurs on when school is out? Could you elaborate on the 100 hours?
Yeah, I'm not, Luke, do you have that in front of you? Or because it's, again, when
So-
we were a foundation.
Yeah, we in our discussions with Luke, we tried to come up with some language that worked for the town and worked for him. And when you started to get into specifics and specific time frames with his ice time that's needed for his arrangements he has with the different groups, we just weren't able to come up with language that had real specific time frames in it that worked. So we left it more of a specific number of hours, and then we work with Luke on an annual basis to because those could change every year. So we wanted to have some flexibility in there.
And we thought that the hours that would be the most desirable for Superior residents would be those hours when kids are off for holidays or not in school, like the summertime. And so those are the hours that we thought would be most attractive for them. And that way we can develop programs, or the town of Superior can develop programs. So you could run something from June through August for skating, or at Christmas time you could have 4 hours of free skating for Skate with Santa for Saturday before Christmas, or however many days you want to do it. So that's why we've kind of left it a little bit more up in the air.
But it can't be like the Ronco hours after midnight or something like that.
No, it's prime hours. They're not 5 in the morning or 2:30 in the morning.
Great.
Thank you.
Additional board questions? Trustee Pennington?
I don't see, you're a good guy, I'm sure, and I'm sure everybody's well-meaning at this point in time, but maybe or maybe not you're on board during the whole duration of this agreement. So on that ice time, is there not the 100 hours, is there not an opportunity, a way to put in that it will be, use some adjective, to protect the town, that this 100 hours will in fact be desirable, or a time when community and participation is possible, or something like that? That simple sentence that protects us for many years out.
Yeah, I think the intention was that what it was supposed to be, so if you would like to clarify that.
Yeah.
Maybe something like at reasonable times or something
Right.
like that. I think that would probably.
Midnight to 2 in the morning or something, yeah, that'd be good.
Right. I think that would meet my,
Sure.
Okay. Additional board questions? I have a few just to run through. So just answer this question for me, and I think I understand this from the attorney. It appears that the town has no liability associated with any of this, so that if something were to go awry or whatever, we're not connected to that as soon as the property transfers to them. Is that
Exactly.
inaccurate? It says. Okay.
Do you mean liability for the payments, or liability for injuries on the property or anything like that?
Any of it.
We don't have, I guess I should say, we don't have either. So.
Okay.
And the payments, we only make the payments of the TIF refund if we get it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the property, for any reason, doesn't generate as much money,
Right. So, I guess there's an economic liability that, something else, Sam's Club, could go on there, and we're not going to make that amount of money, but I'm assuming more legal liability
Yes.
type of. Okay.
no, we're fine on that.
Thank you. Sorry. Of course, with electronic things, I just. Yeah, sorry.
Excuse me.
Yes, please. Well, I'm
My name's
looking.
Sean Killing. I'm a town of Superior resident. I've been for 8 years now. And I don't want to get off the meat and potatoes. These are all questions I don't know the answers to. But I do run an international hockey business and have for almost 20 years now. And the words that these gentlemen were using, the excitement, I heard the word precedence. It is something unique to any hockey community to have something like this. And I know my business, for instance, just brought in earlier this month 50 Danish hockey people, and they enjoyed our community. They spent their money here. I do this from time to time. So not just the international people, not just my group, but I'm one of many that would use this facility. There are others, and there is some real unique things in the hockey world that can be done in this facility beyond the contracted local ice, which is the important part of this facility. But there are some real neat things that can be done that I'm currently involved in, that I'm excited for our own purposes. But somebody mentioned, the nature of hockey people in tournaments. They're doing it elsewhere. It'd be exciting to bring it here. So there is that excitement and that real unique piece that would come along with this project. that I'm directly involved in, would love to see it happen as well. Beyond the budgeting and the meat and potatoes and recouping investment and all of that, there's certainly a lot of outside business that would be drawn to something like this.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
So this might be a question for the hockey club. So just in terms of transparency and meetings of the, I don't know if you have an executive board or whatever it is there a way to make sure that we're kept in the loop somehow of what's happening with the hockey club?
Sure. We have meetings every first Monday of every month, and we could give you the minutes of those meetings if you wish.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. Thanks.
First Tuesday, of every month.
Okay. Let's see. And the proof of financing that it will be required, what is there a metric that's associated with the proof of financing?
No. Paul, do you have, no?
No.
So we'll have a handshake and we'll feel good about the proof of financing.
I want to see a stack of cash.
Okay.
Right, I think we'll see financing documents that are going to show to
Okay.
us that financing has been.
And you're comfortable that
Yes.
that's going to be adequate?
Yes,
Okay.
I think that would be
Just
fine.
want to be sure.
And sort of similarly, what defines end of construction,
Mm-hmm.
CO.
CO.
Yeah. Let's see. So in what's on D on the second page, there's things in the lien that would have restrictions, easements, covenants, leases, liens, encumbrance as set forth therein. Do you anticipate any of those? I know that this is legalese and we'll cover ourselves with that, but
I don't know right now, but I doubt it.
okay. And then on C of that page, we're committing ourselves to the title insurance policy. Do you have any idea what that cost might be? Ballpark figure would be fine.
$1,000 to $2,000.
Okay. I think I'm nearing the end of my questions here. Talked about the ice time.
And I've added at reasonable times to the ice time section.
Thank you. Okay, that's all I had. Any other board questions? Trustee Pennington?
Not board questions, but if there's anybody who's on the negative side of this in the audience.
Well, we'll have public,
Okay,
I'm
okay.
not closing
Okay,
public comment.
okay,
I just want to make
okay.
sure board questions are answered. So with that, any additional, once again, I think that we saw the positive hand sign. So if you feel comfortable with that position, you probably don't necessarily have to speak to this, but if you have something that you really want to make sure that has been communicated tonight regarding a positive or a negative aspect of this, this would be the time.
One is 4404 Southwood Avenue. Let me say straight out, I think the ice hockey arena, whatever it's called, has been a tremendous asset to Superior. I have no problems with the project. However, I have many issues with the project. You're dealing with taxpayers' property here. Taxpayers' money bought this property. I am absolutely appalled at the fact that you are even considering voting on approving this without having figures showing this, and this. This is absolutely absurd that there are no figures to look at. Yes, the finance people have figures. Yes, the owners or whoever these other people are have figures. That's not anything hard copy for taxpayers to look at. This is taxpayers' property that you are dealing with. And you need to answer to the taxpayers with being allowed to see figures regarding this property. 30 days to turn this property over is absolutely absurd. That needs to be a much longer time period. You need to look at the fact of leasing it before it becomes out of the town's control. Have you not learned your lesson with Calamente? I've heard some of you comment about that up there. How do you know that isn't going to happen with this same project? You need to get something that is hard and much faster than what just what the finance people are saying or whatever. There's nothing printed. There's nothing for taxpayers to look at. This is a taxpayer issue. You have no designs on what the street project is going to cost, how the street project is going to be designed, or utilities. You have nothing on that. That's wrong. You need to have hard figures on some of these issues. You need to have a public hearing regarding all of, so that the public can come and see these figures. I haven't heard the issue of flooding. All of you have sat here. All of you have sat here these years. You have never seen Coal Creek flood. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to happen. It is going to happen. And then there goes the investment. That it is absolutely absurd that that you're even considering voting on this without much more input from the public, much more printed data. And none of you have looked at the fact also, you're talking about all this money that's going to come in. You better remember the fact that you have to pay half of that income to the city of Louisville. I haven't heard that mentioned at all tonight, and I'm not sure these people understand that.
Okay, just,
Include the taxpayers, and let's get hard figures.
okay, thank you. Just to be clear, in terms of how the revenue sharing is with Louisville, I don't know if Mr. Magley or the town attorney wants to go through that.
Sure. So none of the property tax is shared with the city of Louisville. We do have an agreement with the city of Louisville to share 50% of the sales tax that's generated from these properties. So the property tax increment financing that is being discussed, none of that is shared with the city of Louisville.
And how much of the cost will be borne from the town in terms of constructing the utilities and improvements through there?
None.
Okay, just wanted to be clear.
And the property's outside the floodplain as well.
Okay.
Can you reiterate the point you made that we do not share any sales tax with Louisville on this particular property?
It's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
Okay. Thought I didn't quite hear that right.
Okay. Additional public comment regarding this issue?
George Kuffner. I agree with Gladys, what she's telling people to look into. The 50% is going to take you twice as long to pay this off. You are dealing with government or town property that we sit here and bought, and you're going to turn it over to the land developer, hoping you get your money back. Well, figure it twice as long on account of 50%. That agreement was made in 1998. They were paid $1 million for 10 acres. That's going to take streets out of it, all the sewer, the water and all that's going in there. I think this ought to go to a vote of the people, I really do. I don't think you ought to shoulder this on your shoulders if something happened to this project, and it very likely could. I'm not against skating. I'm just against this project, the way it's come this fast forward, and I think that people should have a vote on this, and like Gladys said, we should have more numbers and figures of what's taking place over there.
Okay, thank you. Additional public comment?
Michelle Morton, 3341 West Torrey, here in Superior. I think it's a very interesting prospect that this all presents. I just wanted to make sure, sort of what along the lines of what everybody else has been saying, but making sure that when the street stuff is done, that if this does go forward, that we really fully evaluate maybe other options, making them pay for an underpass that people can walk over to the shopping and so forth that is across the road. Just things like that to maybe really help make it a good place. Because right now, going into that area, if anybody's playing hockey, is awful. I feel sorry for the businesses that are there. I don't really feel like they actually do support the businesses that are there. Because you could go into Old Chicago when the parking lot by the ice rink is full, but it's literally empty. So I question some of that and whether or not they really are putting that much in. So just sort of look at that whole picture and make sure that if it does go forward, that everything that we can do in a contract forces them to help create sustainability of the businesses that are around there. So,
Yep,
thank you.
very good, thank you. Additional public comment regarding this issue? Okay, additional board questions and/or comments? Trustee Gregorius?
I just have one quick comment. I think, with all due respect, this is very different than Calmonte. This is building a state-of-the-art hockey facility is very different than building townhomes in the middle of a terrible recession in the United States. So these are very, very different projects. As far as the financial projections are concerned, I've sat here for 6 years, and Mr. Nellis has come before us numerous times over the last 6 years. He's very conservative in his estimates, always has been. He does his research, he does his homework. So I'm here to say that I trust him completely. And if he didn't endorse it, I would have a hard time voting for it, in favor of it. But so I feel very comfortable that, and I'm okay taking the responsibility on my shoulders, basically, and saying I believe in this project, and I think it's going to be great for this community. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Additional comments? Trustee Hansen?
Yeah, just real quick, just to be clear on the numbers again, after the public comment. We heard that the other facility is producing somewhere around 150,000 a year in sales tax revenue based on the pro shop, restaurant, Starbucks, and everything else.
It's about 100,000 when you factor in all the different businesses that are in.
Okay.
That are in there.
All right.
And that's based around about 2.6 million in revenues versus we think this project will do about 5.
Okay, so it could be.
More.
Yeah. So then, if we say 50% of that's going to go to Louisville, we still have about 100,000 or so, somewhere we can estimate a year in sales tax revenue. Now, the property tax revenue is estimated at 300,000 total, but that's based on a value of $9 million.
Correct.
You're saying that's a conservative value.
That's, yes.
It actually could be upwards of twice as much as that.
Yeah, I mean, the county's going to assess the property, and there may be some, Luke may have some discussions with the county on their appraisal of the property, but ours is conservative, staff's is conservative.
Correct. If it is somewhere in between, then the payback is that much quicker then.
Correct.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I guess my comments are, one, thanks everybody for coming and, expressing either positive or negative support regarding the issue. We are spending $1 million. We've already spent $1 million into this project. And, we're not a huge town, so that's a big chunk of change for us. So we need to be very conservative with our dollar figure. But I also completely agree that this is so beneficial to the town that the payback is part of it. Some of it is going to be a defining element of what the town of Superior really is. And I think this is going to be going a long way forward. It's going to be very helpful to spur the urban renewal area, which we really haven't even touched upon, as well as the existing retailers. So for multiple different reasons, I think this is really in the town's financial best interest, and as well as what the town character will be. So thank you so much for working this out, but I'm a firm believer in this, and I'm wholeheartedly in support of it. Trustee Skumatz.
And it's something that residents can use,
Mhm.
which I think is something important.
Great. Trustee Pennington.
I'm not ready for a summation from me yet, but you gentlemen said you worked with the Explorer, met with the Explorer folks, correct?
That's correct.
And I would like just a recap on the potential impact on that project of having this go in.
That did come up in our discussions this morning with them. I explained to them that I felt they're on different timelines, and without a real commitment from them, they're still trying to secure their financing and investment capital, that I didn't feel like it was fair for the town to hold up this project without some commitment. They understood that, and I mean, I think they understood that and said that they could work either way with this project going forward as it is on the 10 acres, or if it were to be incorporated into their development south of the creek. But they said if it moves forward, then they'll continue to work on their plans and just incorporate this project into their plans as far as connections go.
Right. Refresh my mind. In the Explore project, there was there not a ice skating facility in that?
Yeah.
So what do you I have no recollection. Was that going to be a key component of that Explore project? In size of magnitude, how important was it to the Explore project?
It was a component, but their plans seem to be flexible. I mean, it's what their statement to me was, if they can work out use of an existing facility and so it lowers their capital and they can use that in other areas, then that's what they would do.
Is there a potential for a competing ICE project in that would actually reduce the profitability and return on this one?
The indications I get from them is they would first look to use whatever existing facilities and the use of ice time that would be available there first. And, they would have to explore other options if that wasn't there. But Luke's had discussions with them as well, so.
So on
they're
that,
looking to, if they can use existing ice, I think that's what they would prefer to do.
So on net, your attitude is it will not, I'm not putting words in your mouth, it will not affect the Explore decision?
They didn't express any concerns this morning.
Yeah, they certainly would have rather have both projects happen at the same time, but they realize that this project is on the table and theirs isn't that close to being on the table, and they understand that we would have to make that decision.
That's a good question.
Okay. Additional board questions or comments? Can I ask just one brief one, just curiosity? Is high school hockey going to participate in this facility?
To be determined. We typically do have high school hockey that plays out of them, like our current facility. We have 4 high school teams that play over there. But as of right now, we haven't had any discussions with Monarch or anyone else who's interested up here.
Okay.
But I would assume that will happen fairly quickly.
Okay. All right. If there's no more board questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Gregorus.
I would like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-7, series 2012, the resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a development agreement between the town and Iowa BV Land Company.
Motion by Trustee Gregorus, second by Trustee Skomatz. Further discussion?
Just like to say real quickly that coming into this meeting tonight, there were a lot of questions on my behalf about, one, the property, the value of the property, and giving that away and possibly not getting anything in return. Based on the numbers tonight, just that alone is encouraging, but then I agree with the mayor that just having a facility like this in town is going to increase the value of our town, and that's why I'll be voting for this tonight.
Okay, great.
And
Williams.
I was just going to make a comment that I think this is a great project, and I'm honored that we're going to have it in our town. My only snafu in this whole thing is not having a chart that lays out the financials in what we're going to, how we're going to recoup, what the number of years and annual revenue. And so I'm not going to hold this project up for that, but that is something that is really important for me to see when I have a project come forward. I can't read it in a paragraph form and pick out all the different numbers and put them all together myself. I can, but I don't think I should. I think it should be something that is laid out a little bit more simple for anyone to read immediate recognition of seeing what the financials are. So for me, that was kind of holding me back.
Okay. Trustee Cirilli?
Since we're making comments, for me, the big gulp on this whole project was at the time when we agreed as a town to purchase the property for this purpose. And that was unique, and that was a big decision, a tough one to wrestle with. Now I feel like we're just proceeding in a consistent manner. What was driving that for me at the time, and what's still driving that for me, is what a great anchor this makes for what we see as our future town center, and what this will add to the image of Superior. And that's still why I'm supporting this.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Pennington?
I support what Deb said. I agree this is a exciting project. I think it is a key economic developer, which I'm a huge promoter of. However, Gladys makes some excellent points. I really wish it would have done what Deb said in the analysis, so that both we and residents who read the town packet would have best case, worst case scenarios in front of them, the paybacks, the depiction of the returns that we heard here tonight. So I'm a supporter of this, but just there's always lessons to be learned, and that's what I would put forth as a requirement of future proposals that come before the board.
Okay. Any additional board comments? So we have a motion and a second. I think we're spending money, so Phyllis, if you would.
Williams?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Gregorez?
Yes.
Cirilli?
Yes.
Great, thanks very much. So that passes unanimously. So I'm personally looking forward to a long and fruitful relationship between the Ice Ranch and the Boulder Hockey Club, and I think this is going to be very beneficial for the town for as far as I can see into the future. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Can I make one last comment?
Absolutely.
So over the years, we've passed a lot of resolutions. Most of them we've forgotten about by the time we go to bed. This is one of those resolutions that will be imprinted in our memories for a long time to come, so thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. So we're going to take unless people want to wait to see what happens with the executive session, we'll probably take a couple of minutes so people can excuse themselves, and we'll go from there. Congratulations. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if he's asking me. I got my first. It's in here somewhere.
couldn't find the PDF copy, but if you can, let me know.
Hey, Kendra, so that was substantially into the form attached, right?
Yes, we're fine, yep.
Yes, okay.
Yes, thank you. We always do that now.
Okay.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Here, I'm sharing my Coke with you because I don't even have.